And an American Sunrise Early Edition, paging Chicken Little. Not only have the economic doomsayers overstated the ill effects of the Trump tariffs and other policies, they've completely missed the party. We had not only another major rally on Wall Street to begin the week, we also got a big jump in consumer confidence. If this is a recession, sign me up. The doomsayers will also be disappointed by this. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announces that the U.S. government will no longer recommend COVID shots and boosters for children and pregnant women. That sounds like good news. Wait, are we allowed to have two good news stories in a row on TV news? We'll wing it. Threatening to bring the pain, President Trump issues a new challenge to Vladimir Putin and warns him the U.S. can make things very, very bad for Moscow. This all comes as Russia is ramping up offensives in the war with Ukraine. Take a good look at this, because this is what the end of a terrorist regime looks like. Hamas fails to stop the people of Gaza from rushing forth to get U.S.-provided aid. Hamas is finished. And speaking of terrorist regimes, Harvard is not alone. Now the Trump administration is halting all student visa applications as it looks to find ways to better find out if those students are connected to terrorists or enemy regimes. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Wednesday edition of American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Thank you so much for joining us. And joining me now to help me get through the good news and the bad news. That's right. There's actually good news. I know you've been watching TV news your whole lives and have never seen actual good news, or you had to decide it was good news for yourself, despite what the folks on the air said. But there is good news and bad news to report every day, and that's our job. And helping me do that is State Director for the Florida Conservative Caucus, David Pollack. David, I want to take a look at the market levels, because people looking at these numbers right now are going to say, hey, wait a minute, I thought the sky was supposed to be falling. We had a more than 700-point gain on the Dow yesterday. Right now, the opening markets are looking like we're going to gain a little bit more, not much, but a little bit more. And maybe more importantly, we also had a consumer confidence report. Now, that is a really important economic report for those of you who don't follow that so closely. And we can take a look at the boards right now. You see a little bit of red on there, but I'm actually seeing that there, because of the way things closed yesterday, I think we'll still get some positive opens today. We'll see how that goes. But again, folks, we're seeing some good numbers, especially the last couple of days and certainly yesterday. But I want to talk about consumer confidence for a second. I don't want to get too technical. But consumer confidence is the only economic report we get while it's happening. We got the consumer confidence report for May yesterday, which was, as you know, it's still May. Today's May 28th. Yesterday was May 27th, and it was much higher than expected. So, David, the chicken littles who are telling us that the sky is falling, that when the markets went down after Trump announced the tariffs, that we were definitely heading for a recession and that everything was going to go bad, I think they had it wrong. What's your take on this? Because I think it's not right to go crazy when it's going down, and it's not right to go crazy when it's going up, but it's also really irresponsible not to remind people that it went up yesterday. None of the mainstream news organizations are going to talk about what happened in the markets yesterday and what's going on this morning.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's more than Chicken Little. They want the sky to fall. It's not just warning people that the sky is falling. They're doing what they can to make sure that the sky falls. And that's taking every single positive news story, like you mentioned, and then spinning it around to seem like it's doomsday for America. Every single one of Trump's policies that he's enacted in the last 100+ days has been good for America. Yes, there's been a couple of short-term little glitches here and a lot of panic after the tariffs initially stuck. But we've had over $25 billion go into our deficit since tariffs stuck. And when you start to calculate income from tariffs, income from tax cuts, and all of the the wealth that's going to be created in this country. We're looking at 10 years of economic prosperity that we haven't seen in this country in a very, very long time. And that's the golden age that Trump is referring to. Now, people don't want America to succeed. And when I say people, I'm not just blaming Democrats. Republicans have globalists in their midst as well. We've seen them blocking this big, beautiful bill in the Senate. And that's because Trump's economic policies work for America, but they don't necessarily work for the rest of the world. And that has some of these globalists worried on both sides of the aisle, which is why it's vital right now that we make some of these Trump policies permanent before the midterms, especially with some of these DOGE cuts as well. And I'm not so much worried about the people that are trying to put fear in the market. I do have a lot of confidence in our consumers, and like you're talking about with the consumer confidence going way up. And that's because people know they have more money in their pockets. They know they're paying less at the gas pump. They feel optimistic about the future because of this this president's leadership and his policies. And you got to think, 4 years of President Biden, people were like, where are we going? Everything was going off a cliff. The world looked increasingly unstable. At home, people had more fear in our economy, way more than we do now. And now people are feeling confident again. They feel good about spending their money. And despite everything Joe Biden did to destroy the economy, people really wanted this economy to succeed. People want this economy is strong. And under Donald Trump's leadership, the economy is going to get much stronger.
Yeah, it's not your job as a television news person or even as a national spokesperson, even for either party, to talk down the economy. And if it is, if you think it is, then you need to be honest and talk about it when when things are going well. And again, they won't do that. And that's the inherent lie. It's kind of a lie of omission. Now, David, it's not just about the economy. We also have a lot of doomsayers trying to make a big deal about a supposed new COVID strain. You know, every 6 months, there's another COVID strain. It's powerful. That's the one that's going to get us. We keep hearing about this. We got another one in the news lately. But just as they make noise about that, we get this announcement from HHS Secretary RFK Jr. Watch this.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
You know, David, one of the most disingenuous slogans the Democrats have used in recent years is believe in science, trust the science, accusing Republicans and Trump supporters of being anti-science. But there was so little science to actually back up the requirement and then, of course, just the recommendation for boosters for so many people. I mean, look, you don't have to be anti-vax or pro-vax here. That was an objective statement. There wasn't any real scientific data to say, hey, kids need to keep getting boosters. That is trusting the science when you say, hey, there isn't anything to tell us you have to do this. And again, I think the reason why they kept pushing it was not because of any science, but because they are trying to promote negative news, fear in the American public.
Oh, man, I think it was more nefarious than that. I think there was a lot of big pharma that benefited from these vaccine mandates. And I think they got the largest human trial ever in history on new vaccine technology for people that never should have received that vaccine. The fact that this was provisionally approved at the time when, and everyone will go, oh, but Trump approved Operation Warp Speed. Well, that's true, but this was at a time where people were dying by the hundreds of thousands across the world. They didn't know how to treat it. They were killing people with ventilators. And so Trump did what he could to help roll out something that he was told would be a vaccine. Well, little did we find out it wasn't a vaccine at all. It was experimental at best. People weren't not getting COVID from a vaccine, and people were instead getting some really negative side effects, and they were suppressing that. And then even though people were getting sick from the vaccine itself, and we still didn't know how to treat COVID itself, they started mandating that kids get it. They started mandating that pregnant women get it. They started mandating that babies get it. And people were like, wait a second, guys, can we pump the brakes here? Old people, very old people across the world, some of them are dying from COVID, but not children. And they're like, wait a second, there's a new variant. It's affecting children. It's like no matter what. And look, even now, nobody's thinking about COVID anymore. This comes out, like, oh, wait, no, there's a new variant. Nobody cares about the variants. It's like going out and getting a new vaccine for the flu and then still getting the flu every year. COVID is no different. It's never been any different. And now they're trying to, I think, backpedal a little bit. And I'm glad that RFK is doing this and saying that kids didn't need it. But gosh, how many kids got this shot already? And we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. And the fact that they were mandated to get it in some of these places to go to school, the masks and everything that went along with it, this was probably one of the, in my entire lifetime, one of the darkest days in our country's medical history. Considering what people had to go through with these COVID things. And it still makes me angry just talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some fog of war excuses that I'm willing to accept from some people, especially during the early days of this. And I'm not saying that just to say, oh, President Trump did what he could. I'm just saying that clearly. My biggest pet peeve is the people who just think they know for sure, the browbeating, the high-handedness. Nobody knows. We still don't know all the medical and scientific stuff about COVID. We have a lot more information than we did before. But honestly, browbeating people and yelling at people for vaccines or masks or one way or the other is really bothering me. It still does. David, I've heard a lot about millennials and Gen Zers needing safe spaces and struggle sessions and things like that. It certainly isn't great to hear about that. I don't really have a lot of hope for those particular young people in our society. But this is a story I want to talk about. An almost 58-year-old man. His name is Jonathan Capehart. You've probably seen him on TV a few times. He was a member of the Washington Post editorial board. He has a new book out where he talks about how the Washington Post editorial board put out an editorial he didn't agree with. And because one of the members of the board didn't personally apologize to him for putting out something he didn't agree with, he felt like they robbed him of his manhood, of his humanity. This is an almost 58-year-old man, David. I don't understand here how anyone can actually think that they can exist on the left with people like this. This is a person who wears a nice suit, who goes on MSNBC, who was a host of events for the DNC. You might remember him. He was the one who got everyone to raise their hand to say that they think that Kamala Harris lost because she was a woman, and that's the only reason why she lost. And here's a guy writing a book at his age saying, they didn't apologize to me, David, and that robbed me of my humanity. Really? I haven't been apologized to in 50 years. I think I'm still a human.
Well, I mean, just the idea that it's the leftist talking points. And this is a problem on the left. And actually it goes to our last point that we were just talking about with COVID. You weren't even allowed to question the vaccine. You weren't allowed to question the masks or the mandates. And it's still going forward. Yeah, sure. We have X now and we could talk about some of these things on other platforms. You can't. But this goes to show you how anti-speech the left really is. They don't want you to say things that break the narrative. And if you do, they get all emotional about it. I mean, the fact that this guy wants an apology for an editorial opinion that, hey, you can't say, or we don't want you to say certain things because we want to steer the narrative a certain way. Again, it always goes one side. And if it goes the other side, all of a sudden people's fragile feelings are hurt. We need to reopen dialogue in this country, but the left doesn't want it. The left wants to shut down speech because once the truth comes out, that their talking points are flawed and there's no facts to support it, everything starts to break down for them, which is why they have to control the narrative and put all their emotion behind it. The left doesn't believe in free speech. The left believes in their absolute narrative on everything they believe in. And this is, I'm actually happy to see this story. It shows that maybe the pendulum is swinging and we're going to start to get the other side, but I'm not 100% confident on that.
David Pollack, thank you so much for joining us. We got a lot of other things to get to, and we will in the next time you join us. So good to talk to you always, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a lot of fun.
Okay, let's be honest. We're not getting any younger. And if you want to look and feel your best, you need to check out Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements designed to help with every health goal, whether it's boosting your energy, trimming belly fat, supporting healthy blood sugar, pumping your testosterone up, or even reducing swelling in your legs. Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients, backed by clinical research, and manufactured right here in the USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use coupon code EARLY at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there's zero risk in trying something new. So why wait? Head over to purehealthresearch.com now, explore their 45 amazing supplements, and save 35% before this deal ends with coupon code EARLY. Don't miss this chance to feel your best. Okay, coming up, when President Trump threatens Vladimir Putin, what exactly does he have in his arsenal to threaten him with? I'll look into that when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Live look at Miami, Florida this morning. Beautiful day in Florida, looks like. Having some nice days here in New York as well. So that's feeling good. And I love that. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to American Sunrise Early Edition. A special welcome to all of you watching and commenting on Getter and Rumble. Got those platforms up and running right now. Hey, Russia's continued offensive on Ukraine continues to anger President Trump as the chances for peace with Ukraine just seem as remote as ever. Now, that anger has produced a new threat from President Trump. Check out what he posted on his social media feeds. Here's what that threat looks like. Here's what he said. What Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia, and I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. So I wanted to ask and talk a little bit about what I think President Trump is talking about. Now, some people might look at that and say, like, well, President Trump could just do what the Biden administration did and continue to give billions of dollars, lots of weapons with no accountability, et cetera, to just Ukraine. I actually think President Trump is talking about two other things, at least. There probably are some other things that I don't know about. There are two things, though, I think he's referring to when he talks about really bad things that could happen to Russia. One is the economic angle of this. You've heard me say this before. Russia's entire economy basically is based on the energy, the oil and natural gas it provides to the rest of Europe. And President Trump can really undermine that very simply by upping American exports to Europe, telling those European countries that if they want to continue the U.S. support for Ukraine and opposition to Russia, they need to take American LNG, liquefied natural gas imports in big numbers, and maybe we'll make other trade deals based on that. That would really turn off the ATM for Russia in a big way fast. Second, instead of just giving money and weapons to Ukraine, the U.S. could continue to and up its arming of the NATO countries that are in northern Europe, really on that border with Russia. So it'd be more than just Ukraine getting weapons and technology, et cetera, et cetera. It'd be other countries like Poland, et cetera, et cetera. Those are things that would really, really anger and hurt Russia. So I think those are two things that President Trump is talking about. There may be more, and I think we'll hear about more in the coming days. But that's what I'm talking about. People will think he's just talking about giving more money to Ukraine, and that would be a mistake. Speaking of threats, a young South Korean journalist has been cataloging the growing Chinese influence on her country, especially with young people. And you might be surprised by some of the methods she says China is using. Here's what she tells Steve Bannon about it. Watch.
The Chinese culture has been flowing into Korea. On the streets, we see so many Chinese-speaking people these days, and we see so many Chinese restaurants. And that's one of the tactics that Chinese people carry to subvert or infiltrate into one country. They bring their food. One of the famous food is the hot pot, and there's something called a sugar fruit, which they bring to Korean streets, and they would pretty much influence the young generation to be addicted to Chinese food. So I think that's one of the tactics that Chinese people use to subvert Korean young people to like them and like their policy.
It's already working on me. I heard hot pot. I heard something about something sweet. I think I might be brainwashed myself. All kidding aside, though, that's an interesting new tactic that we haven't heard about. Steve Bannon's War Room airs every Monday through Friday here on Real America's Voice from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. This July, there is a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro, the bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran. They are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition won't happen overnight, the Rio Reset in July marks a pivotal moment when BRICS objectives move from decisive theoretical possibility towards inevitable reality. Learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting America to 989898 with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. And tens of thousands of happy customers let Birch Gold arm you with the free no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text America to 989898 today. Coming up, it feels like it's been years, but it looks like we finally have a deal for U.S. steel that will make the United States and Japan happy. But what about American workers and investors? I'll have the story when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. live shot of Dallas right now with the sun coming up right there on the right. That's a great shot. Live shot of Dallas, Texas. They call it the Metroplex, whatever. I don't know. Dallas. Pretty cool city. Let's take a look where the markets will begin today. Again, just a few minutes ago, we saw some red hours. What'd I tell you? It was probably going to turn to green soon enough. And sure enough, look, I am not a cheerleader for the markets. It's silly to tell people after one day or a big rally or even a few weeks of rallies that everything's fine. But no one seems to have a problem with the news media saying everything's terrible after one day of a big sell-off or we're headed to a recession. I'm just asking for some level-headedness here. Good luck. Television news is all about, I think, frightening people, but not this program. There's plenty to be frightened about, and if there's something serious, I'll tell you about it. Don't worry about it, but I'm also not going to frighten you just for no reason. Let's take a look at Bitcoin right now. I think it's pretty much close to, still at its all-time high, pretty much. A little bit over 110,000 is the all-time high, so we're still hovering at that. We are in a good place with Bitcoin if you invested in it a few months ago, at least, or a few years ago, as you know the story. Hey, it took a very long time, but Japan's Nippon Steel finally put together enough national security assurances to get the Trump administration's approval to buy U.S. steel. You might remember in a rare occasion where both the Trump administration and the Biden administration agreed was that they weren't going to allow Japan, a Japanese company, to buy U.S. steel. They both agreed on that. But the Trump administration said that Nippon Steel, a Japanese company, could change their offer to make more of the national security issues go away, and then he would consider it. And so they are now allowing this deal to go through. But we also just learned that about the purchase price. It's going to be $55 a share for U.S. Steel, so that's a good deal for U.S. Steel investors. And here's something that I think is really interesting. Nippon Steel has agreed that U.S. Steel will continue to have an American CEO, and a majority of its board members will be from the U.S. So that apparently, according to the Trump administration, is enough to pave over the trade concerns, the national security concerns. And of course, hopefully, we certainly hope that the administration and future administrations will keep a continued close eye on that. We don't have our own steel industry. That's a big, big national security issue for this country. We cannot allow that to be completely foreign controlled. We can have a partnership, but not foreign control. Okay, like I said, everything was up yesterday, a massive rally in the markets yesterday. But here's something that surprised me. Movie theater stocks were big winners too. Of course, that when I say movie theater stocks, of course, the granddaddy of them all is AMC. AMC. Now, they were big winners. Now, the reason was weekend box office was strong. I can't tell you, I couldn't tell you before this weekend when the last time I went to the movies was. I think it was Oppenheimer more than a year before that. I actually went to the movie theaters this weekend myself. It's been a really long time. So this trend definitely, people certainly got the bug this weekend to go to movie theaters. Investors really liked it. So AMC, that stock soared 24% in one day yesterday. Look, I went to see a movie. It wasn't the greatest, but it was definitely entertaining. It was called Friendship. Just don't eat anything on your way to the theater. That's all I can say. Interesting film. All right. Now for some personal intrigue, revenge, and maybe a little bit of luck. This is an interesting story I want to recommend. The Wall Street Journal has a long piece out about Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon. Now, as recently as about a year ago, people inside Goldman Sachs were leaking to the press all over the place about how they didn't like David Solomon as a CEO. They were trying to undermine him. Sound familiar? Now, they had a lot of reasons to undermine him. Some parts of the Goldman Sachs business that he started, including consumer lending, weren't doing that well. And he was also doing a side job. The Goldman Sachs CEO was actually working as a DJ. I know there's some people in our control room who work as DJs on weekends, or at least used to. He was working as a DJ, and that was getting members of the board or some other executives chatting to the press quietly saying, oh, this guy's crazy. This guy's a loser. Well, again, a little bit of luck. Goldman Sachs has had a very good year since then. But also the Wall Street Journal report talks about how David Solomon purged those people, got them out of the company, paid them off, got rid of them. And now he has one big happy family. It's an interesting story about intrigue. You don't have to watch HBO series about made up stuff like Succession. You can read about it for real. Anyway, David Solomon is the CEO of Goldman Sachs, David Solomon, and he purged his detractors. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Moving America, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company, artilleryteaco.com. Use promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. artillerytco.com, promo code America's T for 25% off your first order. When you see a positive reaction in a stock when a CEO comes back to the job, says he's going to or she is going to be more hands-on, that's the sign that that CEO and that person is really, really well respected. It's as simple as that. People with skin in the game betting a stock up. Well, you can get a great endorsement when that happens, and that's what's going on right now for Elon Musk. I know a lot of people in this country say they hate him, but the people with skin in the game, not so much. Since Elon Musk announced a couple of days ago that he'll be leaving politics for the most part and focusing more on Tesla and SpaceX, Tesla shares have been on a tear. That includes yesterday's 7% gain for Tesla. I know everything else was up yesterday, but Tesla was really up. And now Tesla shares are now just 26% off of their all-time high. Remember, they were much, much lower just a couple of weeks ago. The fact that Elon Musk is coming back is a big deal. There's another story like that out this morning. The former CEO of Vail Resorts, Rob Katz, is coming back to Vail Resorts, and that stock is up 12% in the pre-market. I mean, you can't get a better endorsement than that, folks. That's what happens when you're a good CEO, or at least investors think you're a good CEO. Hey, they're putting the money into it. I'm going to take their advice on it, or at least take their thoughts for being true. All right, Nissan continues to struggle to stay alive. And one of the things it looks like it's going to be forced to do to stay alive is sell its famed headquarters building in Yokohama. This is a famous building with the big Nissan museum in the bottom floor. It's a really kind of a technical marvel. Yeah, there you see it. It's a very, very popular and well-respected architectural building in Yokohama, Japan. But apparently the company could get about $700 million if it sells it. Reports out of Japan say Nissan wants to make that sale by March of next year. I know there's a lot of people who were involved in building that building and designing it are going to be crying over this, but hey, the show must go on. This sounds like a broken record when I say this, but another federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from doing something most of the voters want. This time, it's eliminating New York's war on the working poor. It's also known as congestion pricing. Judge Lewis Lyman granted a temporary restraining order barring the Trump administration from withholding federal funds as a way of pressuring New York State into lifting the special tolls for entering Midtown Manhattan during work hours. This is as I say, it is a war on the working poor. There are some people who have to drive into Manhattan during the work hours, Midtown Manhattan, during work hours, who are not rich, who don't have another option, who can't take a bus or can't take a subway, or they just aren't able to do it. And this is a war on them. Richer people feel good about themselves passing laws like this, but this is hurting the working poor. President Trump's trying to do something about it, and now you have a federal judge. That ban on stopping funding to try to punish New York and to get them to see the realities of things is only until June 9th. So maybe another court will allow the Trump administration to do something about this. Okay, it's not quite a total self-driving mode, but GM has enhanced its Super Cruise feature, and maybe you've heard about this. And the reviews are in for some of these new features, and they're positive. I saw a lot of reviews for Super Cruise yesterday and overnight. They include this. Here's something that Super Cruise does. When drivers reach a Super Cruise-enabled road, there have to be some roads that work with this system, the hands-free system automatically engages. There's also now a Google Maps integration. So this means that Super Cruise cars and trucks, they will make automatic lane changes, and they'll do a lot better in getting you to your destination on time. Now, the Super Cruise technology is only available right now in the Cadillac Vistique, but it will be made available on the GMC Hummer next year. Again, some of these self-driving features are really interesting. Again, it's not full self-driving. It's called Super Cruise, cruise control with a little bit extra, but it's getting good reviews. Okay, coming up, President Trump says if it weren't for him, some really bad things would be happening to Russia. But what does he mean exactly? I gave you my thoughts on that, but we'll talk to a military expert on that in just a moment. And is America's commitment to South Korea now in question? We'll talk about those reports that the U.S. may pull troops out of the country. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. It's Wednesday, May 28th. Here are some of today's top stories. Paging Chicken Little. Not only have the economic doomsayers overstated the ill effects of the Trump tariffs and other policies, they've completely missed the party. We had not only a major rally on Wall Street to begin the week, but we also got a big jump in consumer confidence. If this is a recession, sign me up, please. Threatening to bring the pain, President Trump issues a new challenge to Vladimir Putin and warns him the U.S. can make things very, very bad for Moscow. This all comes as Russia is ramping up its offensives in the war with Ukraine. I want you to take a good look at this because this is what the end of a terrorist regime looks like. Hamas fails to stop the people of Gaza from rushing forth to get U.S.-provided aid. Hamas is finished. And speaking of terrorist regimes, Harvard is not alone. Now the Trump administration is halting all student visa applications as it looks to find out better ways to see if these students are connected to terrorists or enemy regimes. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Again, special welcome to those of you on Getter and Rumble who are watching and commenting. I want to get right into it with your retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Rob Maness, also the host of the Rob Maness Show. Colonel, I say President Trump was alluding to maybe the U.S. arming northern European nations and NATO a little bit more and ramping up LNG imports to Europe when he was talking about those really bad things that can happen to Russia. But I'm sure I'm leaving a few things out. Colonel, what could the United States do to make things really, really bad for Russia, like President Trump was warning?
Well, the biggest pain that the president could bring is increasing sanctions and making them more effective on Russia's oil and gas industry. I mean, that is the real big issue here. And you know what? The European Union still buys gas from Russia. They're the biggest liquefied natural gas buyers in the world from Russia. So that's the biggest one. Look, the United States is not going to leave NATO as much as folks would like us to do that. We are going to continue to help Poland strengthen its defenses, the Baltic states strengthen their defenses. New members, Finland and Sweden, are going to continue to get assistance to make sure that they're up to speed and can fully integrate operationally into NATO forces. And it's not going to go away. That's another issue that Russia is going to have to face if they don't come to the table. But look, Jake, this is a war. It's a continuing war. We've had some very small peaks at success with the recent prisoner swap that was worked out at the table face to face in Turkey. And the problem is from May 20th through the 22nd, I think, Ukraine fired 790 plus drone attacks into Russia proper. Not rumor, but unverified reporting shows that Putin's helicopter, when he visited the Kursk region, was the center of another major attack of over 300 drones. And it was after that that the Russians responded in such a big way that got the president's attention. Of course, a lot of this stuff is unverified on both sides because it's warfare. And, you've got to wade through the propaganda from each country and the propaganda from NATO and the European Union and China on the other side and the Iranians. And it's very difficult to get to the facts. But the fact is this: they're still at war with each other. They've only made very small gains towards peace. And I think the president's going to have to do more. But I don't think he'll pull a trigger on anything until he does what he said he wanted to do. And where he thinks he'll be most successful, and that's sit down face to face with President Putin.
Yeah, we've got to get that going somehow. But I think we need to keep our expectations pretty low. Colonel, The Pentagon is denying reports. I know this is an important story for you. Denying reports that the U.S. might pull out troops from South Korea. Our commitment to South Korea is now very, very, it's almost 70 years. It's actually more than 70 years. I guess we're at 72, 73 years now. And I just wonder what you thought about that report and the denial. Where are we going here? And where did this story come from, do you think?
Well, the Pentagon planners are always going through different courses of action and making plans that some of them don't even get briefed up past the full kernel level, and they go on the shelf for later use so that they can be pulled out in an emergency. It's happened many, many times, including pre-World War II, where we had major war plan against Japan put together that was on the shelf. So that doesn't surprise me. It surprises me that it got leaked out just a little bit, but you know what? We've still got a lot of resistors in the Pentagon. The Department of Defense is a vast, as you know, organization, the biggest one in the world from a bureaucracy perspective, and the resistors are definitely still there. We don't have all the president's appointees confirmed. We don't even have all the appointments made yet, at least not publicly. And these are key positions in Elbridge Colby's policy directorate. You know, he's the number 3 guy, but he doesn't have all his people in place yet. And that's probably where this originated out of, is in the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy or some lower level in the service level in their planning shop that's connected to that, because they're working on the national security and national military strategy as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe some of this is aspirational, looking forward to the day when that is possible, when everybody wants that to happen. But, you know, you look at these pictures of the DMZ we were just showing before, and you think to ourselves, couldn't we have had something like that along our border? Couldn't we have done something like that all these years? I can see where some of the sentiment is coming from, but again, it's not the time for that. Okay, now I have some of the good news that I wanted you to see. Colonel, I say this is video they were about to see. I say this is video of Hamas defeated, and let me explain why. This is video you see of all these people rushing past Hamas barricades to get to the U.S. and Israeli supplied aid. These are people in Gaza. Now, just a few months ago, this would have been unfathomable. Hamas clearly doesn't have the manpower, the bullets, or the fear factor to stop the people from going through the barricades. Hamas wants their people to starve. That's why there's famine. For anyone who has any questions here, why some people, not a lot, some people are suffering in Gaza, it's because of Hamas, but not anymore. Look at this. People just going past those barricades. Again, just a few months ago, you would have heard machine gun fire going off if people were doing this, but I don't even think they have the weapons anymore. To me, this means Hamas is defeated. I know the hostages haven't been returned, the ones who are still alive. I know there are still some Hamas fighters out there, but the war, if the Hamas is done, I don't think they can come back now.
Yeah, that's the biggest indicator of strategic defeat that we've seen so far in this war, and it's good news. I feel for the people that are starving to death at the hands of Hamas, because this is all Hamas's responsibility and Iran's responsibility, nobody else's. It's very important that we continuously emphasize that fact. You know what? I would love to see the UN folks that are delivering that aid just deliver it in front of the barricades instead of behind it for once, and really pay attention to helping the actual people that millions and millions of dollars and resources are being poured in there to help. And that's why Americans are skeptical of this, is that we shouldn't even have barricades preventing these folks that are hurting from getting to this aid that we are sending to them, and the Israelis are allowing to come in. And it just absolutely infuriates me to see this happen when we are the ones paying for it, and we are the ones that want to see peace the most. Hamas could stop it tomorrow. I'll say it again. They could stop it tomorrow by laying down the rest of their arms, walking out, raising the white flag, and just opening the gates for that humanitarian aid.
Yeah, I mean, another good thing we saw is that people, once they were getting the boxes, were turning to the camera and blessing the United States and cursing Hamas. So, I mean, maybe we'll get some reasonable attitudes from the people there as well. Because, again, as it's been pointed out, as much as we want to help so many of these civilians, not one of them has stood up to help the hostages. Remember, the hostages are being held within the civilian population, not one. And yet the United States and Israel still doing the humanitarian thing there. I'm in favor of doing that. But again, it has to be done with the caveat of understanding these people have to reject Hamas, or they'll be just in the same place once again. Finally, Colonel, RFK Jr. making that announcement. We talked about it earlier in the program, that no longer will children and pregnant women be recommended to get the COVID vaccines and boosters. But being from the military, I know you know about this really, really well. I just want to make sure we remind everyone that not only did the COVID mandate hurt a lot of civilians, but this was a major issue in the military. We lost some good people from our armed services because they wouldn't get the vaccines. What does this announcement from RFK Jr. mean to you? Is this vindication for these folks, or is it one of those things where, yeah, it's nice that he's doing it, but it's coming around way too late?
Oh, it's vindication, not just for folks in the military that recognize this vaccine for what it was. On their part, it was an unlawful order, and Secretary Hegseth acknowledged that both verbally and in writing just a week and a half ago. And, those positions I said that weren't filled yet, the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness Office is the one responsible for the policy of reinstating these folks that were harmed by the COVID vaccine. And while the policy is out, it still needs a lot of work, and we're trying to get numbers as to how many people might have come back in since Secretary Hegseth implemented that policy over a month ago, and we can't get numbers. So we still have people that are not confirmed and not appointed yet in that office area, and that's critically important to that. But I'm glad to see RFK Jr. Removing this from the childhood vaccine regimen and for pregnant women. That's critically important to the health of the future of this country, and it's a good thing to see.
Yeah, and again, the thing that made me crazy on day one about this is that I kept saying to people, please don't call it a vaccine. You want to call it a treatment, you want to call it a prophylactic treatment, that would have been one thing. But of course now the vaccines that we know do work, some of the other vaccines that have been in our system for a long time, people are questioning it, and you can't blame them. Why would they not question it when they use that same word vaccine? It's not a vaccine. I don't know what you call it necessarily, maybe a treatment, but that was a fatal flaw as well. Colonel Rob Maness, thank you so much for joining us. It's already Wednesday, so maybe I should already wish you an early happy weekend, but have a great rest of your week either way.
Thanks, Jake. Happy weekend.
All right, yeah, that's I'm going with that. All right, coming up, I have been sounding the alarm about the Joe Biden auto pen and these crazy pardons since this show began months ago. Now President Trump is using the same terminology I have. David Brody and I will talk about that when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Live shot of my birthplace, folks, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And they are on the verge of getting to the NBA Finals, the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's going to be a big day and big night in Oklahoma City. That's their only pro franchise. Yeah, that's my birthplace. I'm pulling for them. Sorry, there are Minnesota Timberwolves fans out there. No offense to you, but I'm pulling for the Thunder. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. And I've been talking for a long time for years, actually, about how Joe Biden's cognitive decline and the attempted cover-up of it is the biggest political scandal in American history. I really don't think there's any doubt about that. But it got even worse during the transition period, something I talked about on this program with you many times, when we saw these crazy pardons that were coming out of the Biden White House in the month of December. I'm not talking about the pardon for Hunter Biden and the pardon for Anthony Fauci. Those were, I think, contemptible. But we knew that that was coming, didn't we? Didn't we know that? But when they pardon people like the Cash for Kids judge, who nobody was supporting from any political party or political faction in this country, when they pardon someone who tortured and killed a child, I thought to myself, there is really something funny going on now. And now President Trump is using the same terminology. He's talking about and asking about who had access to that auto pen, the auto pen that is used to sign executive orders and, again, used to sign pardons. There are some people on that list that really need to be investigated. Will they ever go to jail? Will President Biden be charged? I don't know. But the American people deserve to know about this. And I think that President Trump harping on this, there'll be his critics, David Brody joining us right now. There'll be his critics who will say, hey, he's just doing that to distract from whatever he's doing. But honestly, if we don't get some kind of some truth about this, if we don't find, if there isn't some kind of American revelation about what was going on the last 4 years, I think that we're in real trouble, more than our usual trouble. I think we're in real extra trouble as a society.
Oh, I think you're 100% right, Jake. I think this is going to eventually, I say this, what's this? I was supposed to say this is going to the U.S. Supreme Court. There's not even a legal case being challenged yet, but I believe it will go through the court system. I think the United States Supreme Court has to rule out Article 1, Section 7. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, you know, in Article 1, Section 7, it says he, as in the president, he shall sign. What does that mean exactly? As you mentioned, with the clemency and the pardons, we're talking about a batch format that they're looking at specifically with the auto pen. I mean, in other words, it was just a batch of dozens and dozens of clemency and pardon orders, if you will, done by the auto pen. And as you pointed out, Jake, you know, going through each one, well, wait a minute, how much did he know and when did he know it and all of that type of stuff in terms of what Biden was even privy to. Well, we know he wasn't privy to any of this. I mean, if he was, he forgot it an hour and a half later after the oatmeal. So look, the bottom line is that there's major problems here, and I think it's a constitutional fight. And this shouldn't really surprise us. We've seen this a little bit before. I say a little bit. This is different, right? We've seen the auto pen before. It's been controversial. George W. Bush wouldn't use the auto pen. He felt it was not constitutional. Obama used it. Of course, back in the day, I mean, you can go back to Thomas Jefferson, who technically used it. It wasn't obviously the version we use today, but it's been used before by presidents. But legal scholars really do differ on what is the ultimate outcome of the auto pen. But look, Woodrow Wilson, he was hospitalized, right? He had the strokes, and Edith Wilson was running the country. The difference here, though, is that based on what we saw with Biden, based on the book that just came out and all the evidence, we know that he was mentally impaired, and that's putting it nicely. And so that's what makes this different than other auto pen constitutional fights. What happens when you have an auto pen, but you have a guy that is mentally incapacitated? Then what do you do exactly? I think it takes on a whole different level and a whole different context, Jake.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the court system, David, because here's what I think is very interesting. You're going to have a lot of the same judges, if this goes to the courts, who are saying President Trump doesn't have this authority and doesn't have this immunity and yada, 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 who are going to have to say, but Biden did. In other words, he's going to capture these people. Right. This has a broader, for people thinking, oh, this is just about the auto pen. This may be actually a backdoor way to get the president's other executive orders now to go through. All right. American Sunrise, the big show coming up for the next 2 hours. The gang's all there. I'm Jake Novak. I'll see you tomorrow.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
Good morning, you guys. I hope you enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend.
If I'm looking a little heavier, it's because I ate, took a nap, went back, ate some more, took a nap. went down the street for a walk and then continued to eat. Yeah, I was a glutton, but I enjoyed
Same
myself.
with me.
Good morning, you guys.
I felt my hands and feet were like aching this morning. That's what happens when I overeat. And Colin, thank you. I asked you to put on the slim filter this morning, but apparently we don't have a camera lens for that right now. But I've ordered one. It's on Amazon. It should arrive in 2 days. It's on Prime.
President Trump is reportedly weighing new sanctions against Russia following this weekend's massive attack on Ukraine. The aerial offensive is said to be the largest of the war so far. Taking to Truth Social, President Trump saying his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, has gone absolutely crazy.
He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him. But he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all.
Yeah, I think he was getting played a little bit. I think Trump did what needed to be done, though, making a good, honest effort to try to bring peace to that region. I think it was necessary. I don't think that we might be able to get to where we need to go if Trump hadn't actually done that, because Trump is kind of flummoxed right now. He wants peace. He likes making deals. He wants to bring stability to this region, and that is a prime driver of his presidency. No more involvement in foreign wars. But he also, as you say, he doesn't like being made a fool of. Now, the question is what is Trump going to do about it?
There is a specific set of sanctions that President Trump has weighed, and other presidents have weighed but have not used. It's called the nuclear option of sanctions that target the central bank. The way Russia moves money in and out of its country is very centralized. If you sanction the central bank, no cash can move in and out of Russia, and Russia would suddenly have bread lines forming in a few weeks after that.
So here's a question. Could a GOP senator's pushback to President Trump's one big beautiful bill stop it in the upper chamber? And then he says President Trump has to get serious about spending reduction, especially when it comes to that very deficit.
He's sounding the alarm and saying, look, we can't have this kind of ongoing spending on infinitum forever. Look, what happened to the fiscal hawks? Republicans used to be the ones that smaller government, less spending, and yet here we are. We pushed these spending levels during COVID. Why don't we return to 2019 levels? What's wrong with that? I would have to agree with that point of view.
Ahead on American Sunrise, excuse me, a group of Republican senators is calling the House version of the budget bill a debt bomb. Find out why and whether the situation can be reconciled before it implodes. Plus, the Trump administration has ordered more cuts to funding for Harvard University. So what's on the chopping block now? And Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is changing COVID vaccine recommendations for certain people. Find out if you are on his list. Those stories and so much more right now on American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics,
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
we've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning. I'm Bo Davidson filling in for Dr. Gina live from West Palm Beach. So great to have you with us watching. Let's bring in David Brody in Washington, D.C., a.k.a. The Swamp, and Terrance Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, Bo.
Doing well,
Good
Bo.
to see you.
David, good morning.
That's great. Just real quickly, how's the weather in each of your respective cities?
Cold.
Horrible.
Well, then I won't mention that in West Palm it's 80 degrees and perfectly sunny.
Oh, gosh.
But
Here we go again. Broken record.
Right. I think when I walked out of the door this morning, it was like 56.
Yikes.
It's not too warm here. It typically doesn't get warm here, though, until first week of June, kind of mid-June, then it really gets consistently warm. So eat your heart out, Jake. Appreciate you bringing that up. Starting on a negative
well,
note.
gents,
hey, look, guys.
Let's get your quick takes on this RFK changes to the vaccine recommendations, specifically regarding healthy children and pregnant women. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's a good move. I think it's probably a little late. Could have happened way before now. But it's definitely a good move. I'd like to see, quite honestly, the recommendations change overall, not just for pregnant women and young children. I'd like to see the recommendations change in general, David.
Yeah, and that may be the next step. We'll see with RFK Jr. at the helm. But yeah, no, it's obviously it's long overdue. And once again, the tinfoil folks were right again, right? You know, I mean, this idea that these vaccines were obviously concerns right from the get-go, and we knew it, we said it. Now just proven right. And once again, children and pregnant women, that I think is the first step, Bo. But where are you on this? And then we need to get to the Bible verse. But tell us, I'm curious to get your take.
Well, I just think it's a little too late, as Terrance said. You know, they were recommending it. My wife was pregnant at that particular time, and she opted not to take it. I think that was the right move. They try to force so many vaccines in your system. Yep. I just think immunizationally, I think that's wrong for our immune systems to be able to. I mean, even babies. My son now, I mean, they just want to force vaccine after vaccine, and we refused a lot of them because I think that's, talking to Dr. McCullough yesterday, if you guys remember what he said, I'm a little concerned because I think parents have to monitor their kids' health and see what's being stuck in them. And I think we're finding out now about COVID, some stuff was shoved down our arms way too soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's check out today's
verse.
Yeah, let's get to that Bible verse today. Exactly, David. James 4:8. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Well, we are now seeing more reports of concern some GOP senators have over the House budget bill. The Hill is reporting that some GOP senators are concerned that the bill does not rein in federal spending enough. And one GOP Senate budget hawk called it a debt bomb. The Senate is expected to make more changes to the budget deal after the House passed it last week. Now, for more on this, let's bring in Missouri Congressman and our good friend Mark Alford. Congressman, what's your response to this report claiming concerns from your Senate colleagues about this being a debt bomb?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. Look, this bill is not perfect. We knew that going in. There had to be some negotiations with our friends from the SALT states, state and local taxes. We raised the cap on that from $10,000 to $40,000. We were tasked, and we had an agreement with President Trump and John Thune of the Senate Majority Leader, and Speaker Mike Johnson, that we would find $1.5 trillion in savings in this reconciliation bill. We did that. We went above that. We found $1.6 trillion. A lot of that coming from Medicaid, getting rid of people who should not be on Medicaid, getting them off the rolls, including $1.4 million illegal aliens. We found $900 billion worth of savings in that program alone. This program is not perfect. I welcome any improvements the Senate might want to make, but we have a very slim majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. We cannot afford to lose our members from New York, California, and Illinois who need that SALT cap raised to the $40,000 level so that they can come back to Congress.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a delicate dance for sure. Congressman, let's talk a little bit about what we were just vamping about at the top. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. announcing that he's changing the COVID vaccine recommendations. So basically saying healthy children and pregnant women don't need it. Here he is the other day, actually yesterday. Take a look.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
Congressman, I love the content. Visually, they'll look like an SNL skit, but that's a separate matter. Your take.
Well, look, remember the mantra during this whole COVID debacle was follow the science? The problem is they never followed the science. They knew that this shot was not needed for healthy people, for especially healthy young people. And so now they're finally following the science. Thank God we have RFK Jr. in there and some people with some common sense, or we're going to do some common sense measures to protect our people, the American people. I have a new grandbaby, little Naomi. I don't know if I haven't really consulted with my daughter whether they're going to get this COVID shot, but I will say it should be up to the parents. There should be I don't think, recommendations for young babies and healthy mothers to get this shot.
Mm-hmm. Congressman, I want to talk about Harvard here in just a minute, but first, just want to make sure that I fully understand this budget reconciliation process. Okay. Once the Senate passes its bill, it will come back to you and your colleagues in the House, and then you guys will vote again on the measure that the Senate has sent you. Is that accurate?
Well, that's correct. If you remember Schoolhouse Rock from our younger days, it's supposed to go to a conference committee. It could possibly do that depending on how many changes are made. A lot of times in these bills, like with the National Defense Authorization Act, it's a so-called conference, but the leaders at the top, the Senate Majority Leader, Minority Leader, the Speaker of the House, and then the Minority Leader in the House get together and put together a framework, and then we vote on that. It depends on how many changes the Senate is going to make, if there are going to be substantial changes. We might be able to deal with some minor changes. Speaker Johnson has said, don't change too much. We are on a time crunch here. We want to get this on the president's desk by July 4th.
Congressman, you have called for an investigation into potential terror ties into the alleged suspect behind the killing, of course, of the 2 Israeli embassy staffers last week. Can you expand on this and let us know what exactly you want to see in terms of accountability?
Well, yeah, Sarah Milgram was the young lady killed. She was from the Kansas City area. I'm visiting with her family today. I'm in Kansas City. Look, this monster, Elias Rodriguez, was a member of the Party of Socialist Liberation. In Chicago, they had a gala benefiting the Middle Eastern Children's Alliance, and it has ties to the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, which is a designated terrorist organization, so designated by our government. We want Pam Bondi and others to figure out if there is a direct link there, if these alleged killers like Elias Rodriguez are members of foreign terrorist organizations. We have
just
got to
Terrance
stop.
asked the Harvard question because he teased it. Yeah.
We have got to stop the anti-Semitism that's going on in America, and we've got to figure out if these people are actually tied to foreign terrorist organizations. That will give us greater strength in enforcing some of these laws.
Congressman, we do want to talk about Harvard. You heard David Brody advocating for me. I appreciate it, David. Congressman, President Trump has really been in this fight, if you will, this push and pull, this tug with Harvard University. One of the latest kind of chapters in this whole issue is, in this whole saga, is that the Government Accountability and Services, General Services Administration, not what it's called, excuse me, is basically sent out a letter saying that all federal agencies should look at any funding that it has for Harvard University and consider withdrawing all of that. Where do you stand on all of this? Is this something that you and your colleagues in the House are even discussing, or are you just leaving this up to the White House pretty much?
Well, no, I think we have some say in this, going through the Labor and Education Committee led by my good friend Tim Walberg. But it's going to have to be done right. And if we're going to take away funding from Harvard and divert it, I think one of the good plans that the president suggested is putting them into trade programs. We have going to have an explosion here in America, I think, of needing to have a workforce that is skilled in labor and trade. When we start building a lot of these data centers and other things around to meet the energy needs that we need in America. And there's going to be other building. We have a housing shortage right now, an affordable housing shortage. I have someone here in our district who builds apartments who has already contacted me wanting to know how to get on the list to get some of this diverted grant money so they can set up more training programs for the skilled trades. There's a definite need for that. You can make great money in the skilled trades. My youngest son is a carpenter, and he's doing quite well.
Congressman, just real quickly before we let you go, and on this note, Secretary Rubio has put a pause on student visas. Do you support that measure? Do you think it's the right move in terms of vetting who our international students are, especially coming here in places like Harvard, which perhaps things like that can lead to things like what happened in Washington, D.C.?
Bo, it certainly is. We should know everyone who's coming into our nation with a student visa. That is at the discretion of the Secretary of State. And if they're not here for good reasons, here to be a part of the fabric of America, if they're here to rip apart America, they shouldn't be here. And we should not be letting them in. A lot of people say it's a free speech issue. You do have free speech, but there are conditions when you come here under a visa like that. You need to be promoting America, not tearing down America.
Well, Congressman Alford, thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate you. I know you've got a lot of God's work ahead of you, so thanks, Congressman.
Thank you. Take care.
Appreciate it, Congressman.
And coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with T. Bates. And later, President Trump has a new warning for Vladimir Putin. We have his latest remarks ahead on American Sunrise.
Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Washington, D.C., the good news, Joe Biden, nowhere to be found. Having said that, he probably could be on his bike somewhere in Delaware, so watch out below. You never know when that's going to come to literally a screeching halt. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up, Trump, the United States, Iran. The negotiations over a potential Iran nuclear deal. What's the latest? We'll have it here in a moment. First, though, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
14 state attorneys general have the green light this morning to move forward with a lawsuit against Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency. They're specifically challenging DOJ's efforts to cut federal spending, saying that there's no law authorizing Musk to slash budgets. They also are trying to stop DOJ from closing federal agencies. The top law enforcement officials from New Mexico, Oregon, and 12 other states filed suit alleging that President Trump has given Musk, quote, unchecked legal authority without authorization from Congress. While D.C. federal court judge Tanya Chutkan upheld the case against Musk, she dismissed claims against President Trump, saying that her court couldn't interfere with the performance of his official duties as president. This latest lawsuit is among about 20 that have been filed in various federal courts pushing back against Elon Musk's authority as the head of DOJ. Harvard University could soon be persona non grata when it comes to federal agencies. The federal government's General Services Administration reportedly sent a letter to all federal agencies on Tuesday directing them to review and potentially terminate or reallocate contracts with Harvard. This latest blow to the Ivy League school could cost about $100 million. The Trump administration has already frozen nearly $3 billion in federal research grants to schools. The president is also seeking to stop the university's ability to enroll international students, which makes up about 27% of the school's total enrollment. The administration's moves could affect Harvard's financial stability and its global standing. Harvard is the nation's oldest and wealthiest university. Will the U.S. Senate's loss be Alabama's gain? That is the question this morning.
I will be the future governor of the great state of Alabama. I've still got 18 months to go with President Trump to make America great again. We got a lot of work to do. Monday we'll go back and pass the big, beautiful bill for President Trump. But I'm doing this to help this country and the great state of Alabama.
That was former college football coach and current U.S. Senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville. He's going to be running for governor in his home state next year. Senator Tuberville is promising to boost manufacturing in Alabama, along with improving education and stopping illegal immigration. If Tuberville does win and leaves his Senate seat, he'll likely be replaced by another Republican, as his district is pretty solid Republican. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll, of course, have more headlines coming your way shortly, including President Trump teasing a potential announcement related to Iran. So, what might it be? We're working to get you some answers. And later, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett calling on the GOP to question President Trump's fitness for office. Her remarks are coming up as well. First, though, a quick look at this day in history. It was on this date in 1788 that the Federalist Papers were published. The Federalist Papers are a collection of essays by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. They discuss the foundation of what would become our government. One of the key essays focused on judicial review. More American Sunrise coming your way in 2 minutes.
Square in New York, in Manhattan. My New York Knicks took it on the chin last night. Not that you want a sports update from me, but I'm commiserating with the Knicks right now. They're my team. I grew up about a mile and a half or so from Madison Square Garden. I'm just really bummed. But then again, I'm over my copay on therapy appointments with the Knicks this month, so there's that issue too. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. All right, President Trump is teasing a major announcement on Iran. Trump says talks have been progressing very nicely, very, very nicely, and they have reportedly hit the expert level, whatever that means exactly. The main sticking point is uranium enrichment. Iran says it needs to keep enrichment while the U.S. wants it gone. For more, let's bring in retired Army Colonel John Mills. Colonel, great to have you with us. So Iran is saying that freezing uranium enrichment ain't happening, and any reports like that are totally false. So where is this going exactly? Good morning to you.
Hear me?
Yeah, well, he froze. He went into Skype freeze mode, T. Bates. Right. But look, it's a legitimate question because the truth of the matter is you can negotiate with Iran all you want, but if they're not going to freeze the uranium, you're going to have some problems.
No, absolutely. And that's fundamental because the reality is Iran says, OK, we can talk if you say that we do away with our nuclear weapons. But the red line for Iran is allowing them to keep uranium. Well, the uranium is the whole point. That gives them still access to the world market because they can still sell uranium and use that as a way to enrich the nation. And it still gives them the opportunity, if they decide to back out, to still continue the nuclear program and potentially develop a nuclear weapon, which is the whole point of all of this, Iran. So it seems to me that the entire conversation, the debate, and the negotiations are disingenuous from Iran's part, Bo.
Yeah, and you know, something I want to know and actually ask David, because I know you know so much about the Middle East. You know, Iran seems to have a very young population. And from my understanding of it is that if they could just overthrow this government somehow, some way, it could be a key to peace in the Middle East. But my understanding is that we're not supposed to negotiate with terrorists. So this whole idea of negotiating with them seems interesting to me. I hope Trump prevails. But is there a future, David, for a government in Iran that is not theocratic, that is not oppressive, that is not terroristic? What do you think?
Yes, but it's going to take some time. And honestly, for decades now, and Bo, you make a great point, for decades now, there has been kind of a mini uprising, if you will, not a full uprising, but a mini uprising by the youth of Iran. They want change, but it's going to have to be 1979-ish. I mean, it's going to have to be, you know, Shah of Iran situation. They're going to have to take over the country. That's the only way it's going to happen. I mean, it's not going to happen from the Shah. I mean, it's not going to happen from the mullahs. So that won't happen. But let's get more expert analysis back with us, Colonel Mills. Colonel Mills, to Bo's point that he's raising, beyond the fact of what will happen with Iran and the youth there is this idea about negotiating with terrorists. I mean, look, the United States is negotiating with Hamas or negotiating with Iran. They're negotiating with Putin, who's a bad, evil dude. I mean, my issue with what's going on is that Trump is a great deal maker, and he's thinking it in terms of like, look, it's a great deal for you, it's a great deal for us, let's work it out. The problem is when you're dealing with evil people, they don't want a deal, they want world domination. That's the problem.
Oh, yes, David. Of course, I think the Trump team is approaching this wisely. You have to at least give it a go and try it. You're dealing with totalitarian nations that look, they're going to game this and they're going to slow roll this all they can all day long. But we have a lot of tools in the toolkit, most of which were not deployed by the Biden committee. But we can do that. So I think before we just come out of the gate guns a-blazing, you have to use the other instruments of national power. Of course they're playing us. Of course they're slow rolling this, but we got to squeeze them, and there's a lot of ways we can squeeze them. One of them is absolute cutoff of the gas and oil shipments to China. This is whether it's been Putin, whether it's been Iran, the Biden team would set a sanction, walk away. Within 30 seconds, they'd figure out how to get around it. And we have to be far more aggressive on it's sanction enforcement. A sanction without enforcement is worthless. So that's what we got to do. And part of the problem is our much weakened U.S. Navy, which has limited reach and endurance to set up and block these shipments out of Iran or Russia.
John, Terrance here. Good to see you as always, my friend. You used the word aggressive, which brought to mind for me the current relationship between Vladimir Putin and President Trump. Taking the True Social, President Trump writing, what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have happened already to Russia. And I mean really bad. He is playing with fire. Of course, this particular post that you're looking at here coming on the heels of President Trump calling Vladimir Putin crazy over the weekend. One of the questions we've been posing here all week is if Vladimir Putin is playing President Trump. And I only ask that question because President Trump just last week after his phone call with Vladimir Putin came out and said, look, there's going to be peace talks imminently happening. We're making progress. And then days later, there's this massive attack from Russia. And something's just not jiving.
Right.
Well, the Russians are like this. It's in their DNA to pretend to cooperate and still be uncooperative no matter what. This is the way they were. The Second World War, I mean, they were like this, even though they were supposedly our allies. The Russians, it's just that is the way they are. But progress is being made on these longer term things, even with these Putin tantrums and flexing of muscles. But here's another situation. This makes that the European countries still continue to buy, much reduced now, but still continue to buy Russian gas and oil. We need to absolutely forbid any purchases of Russian gas and oil. These European countries are just horribly delusional on this. They're scared of Putin, but they fund him by buying his gas and oil. It makes no sense. But we also what we can do is start shutting down his exports of gas and oil. Now now he's actually using military escort on those gas and oil shipments through the Baltic because he knows he's beginning to get concerned that we're going to start doing that. So in the Baltic, but as soon as they come out of the Baltic, they don't have enough naval resources to fully escort these ships. As soon as they come out of the Baltic at the top end of the UK, that's where we start grabbing them and getting them. So there's that. Also, we have to unleash American energy. Unfortunately, we had a number of our energy companies that became woke and started being anti-energy. So we got to de-woke the woke energy companies and unleash American gas and oil and replace that. So get it from us. Far better quality, far better price, and start getting ready to strangle their exports. That's what's really going to choke them.
Colonel, really quickly before we let you go, I want to call your attention to this Axios headline that says White House envoy says Hamas's response to ceasefire proposal is unacceptable. Dave and I were speaking earlier about negotiating with terrorists, how you do that. We've been speaking to Hamas through a back channel. The negotiations have shown very little progress. What's the reality here of whether we get anywhere with Hamas? Just briefly in about 30 seconds.
I think the reality for what's left of the peaceful citizens of the former Gaza Strip area, most likely they are going to be moved to Libya. That's already being discussed. There's not much Hamas to talk to, and Israeli essentially occupies 70% of Gaza. So, I mean, you're dealing with a handful of the terrorists. The terrorists are going to be killed or eliminated. So that's what's going on here. And most likely Libya, my understanding, has already shown an interest in giving them some small piece of territory and starting over afresh in Libya.
Colonel Mills, great analysis as always. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, coming up, NPR now suing the Trump administration after President Trump signed an executive order cutting its funding. Where does it all go from here? We're going to take a look at that next on American Sunday.
City. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Bo Davidson, filling in for Dr. Gina. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's time now for today's health news, sponsored by The Wellness Company. And under the microscope today, there's a big announcement from HHS Secretary RFK Jr. as he is now instructing the CDC to remove COVID-19 vaccine recommendations for pregnant women and healthy children. In a post on X, Kennedy says it's, quote, time to move forward now that the pandemic is behind us. However, the CDC has not yet updated its immunization schedule to reflect the changes. Kennedy says that the moves uses common sense and reiterated both HHS and CDC's commitment to gold standard science. And it is a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future. But the reality is there's a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. We know that. The truth is that the forces that are responsible for breaking our healthcare system aren't going to simply go away. The challenges our system faces won't disappear overnight. So now, more than ever, you need to be prepared. And that's, of course, where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust, and their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist the proper use of these medications. From the flu to strep throat, from COVID to the bird flu, from a trip to the beach to a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again, not just a slogan, it starts at home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV today and order. One more time, that's twc.health/RAV, and use the promo code RAV to save 10%. Now let's send over to my colleague, Emily Finn. Emily, it's so great to see you.
Oh, great to see you, Bo. All right, we are going to check in on Capitol Hill, where the Senate is tackling the budget debate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats will be in lockstep and oppose the measure. No surprise there. Schumer says Democrats will vote unanimously against President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. Now, GOP senators have voiced their concerns over the levels of spending cuts and are weary about the cuts to Medicaid. For more, let's bring in the host of the Ike Wingate Show on X and Rumble. Ike Wingate, thank you so much for joining us this morning. What do you make of all of this?
I think it's going to be difficult to defend not cutting taxes. I don't know how Democrats are going to do that, but they seem to be, sort of 10 for 10 and picking the wrong issues these days to really fight for. Democrats should shift to the middle if they want to have any chance of surviving. And I hate to say it, but it is better for our country to have a strong Democrat Party. President Trump has said that as well. It keeps each party sharp. And so this bill specifically, they want to talk about cuts, and we have arguments about cuts right now, which I kind of like, actually. Let's cut more. But there are up to $2 trillion in cuts over 10 years. And we're talking about Medicaid and SNAP and work requirements. So if we step back, the overall issue here is we're talking about working for receiving these benefits. There is dignity in work. It is actually a good thing. But when it comes down to some arguments that are going on with this bill, specifically in the Senate, Stephen Miller has pointed out, we're talking about discretionary spending versus mandatory spending. In this bill, it's mandatory spending, so the DOGE cuts wouldn't really come into play here. But I don't know how Schumer is going to defend this, because whether you talk about cuts or not, we are talking about reducing taxes. And so if you vote against this bill as a Democrat, you are defending higher taxes for everybody.
Yeah, and I just think kind of what you said, the Democrat Party is in an entire state of disarray. There's no de facto leader. Nobody seems to know who's doing what, and it's all negativity. So until they come up with a cohesive plan, I think they'll continue to be in disarray. Ike, I want to get your thoughts on this. NPR is suing the Trump administration after President Trump signed an executive order cutting some funding. The CEO for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting said this executive order violates the First Amendment, and it needs to be challenged for constitutionality. Ike, what do you make of this, and do you think that they have a point, or do you think President Trump is doing the right thing in cutting some of this funding?
It's absolutely the right thing. We're not talking about free speech here. We're not talking about the First Amendment. We're talking about tax dollars subsidizing a biased media outlet. Plain and simple. We're not talking about someone limiting NPR's ability to broadcast. NPR is not unbiased. They've censored the Hunter Biden story. The CEO has gone on the record saying that America is addicted to white supremacy. And just last week, they claimed that Trump's claim about genocide in South America was false. And so these are just a few examples of the known bias that is evident in NPR, and their CEO is a radical. There are hundreds of nonprofits in media that don't receive a dime from the federal government, and they are just fine. So this isn't about shutting down NPR. It's about stopping the subsidies for propaganda. That's all it is. They can make it about free speech, but the truth is, it's really they are upset that they are not getting a free handout from the American taxpayer anymore.
Absolutely, Ike. And, NPR isn't the only of the mainstream media, the biased mainstream media, totally favoring the left that is in a state of chaos right now. I'm thinking about CBS. We have Gayle King that is leaving their network. We have their president who is resigning and stepping down as well. Talk to us about the state of the mainstream media. I mean, has the trust just been completely lost among the American people that we're seeing this play out among all of these different outlets?
Yeah, this election was really a referendum on the lies that have been perpetually spewed out to the American people. And I think COVID, honestly, was a big part of this. During COVID is when a lot of people recognized, hey, wait a minute, we can't trust these people because independent sources that are not funded by people that are in the pharmaceutical industry or otherwise are more trustworthy than these big media outlets. And so the mainstream media has a mainstream major problem on their hands. And it takes a lot of money to run one of these networks. And when they're not bringing in viewership, that means they're not bringing in revenue. And so I think this last election was absolutely crystal clear that people don't trust the media anymore. And you look at the selective editing that 60 Minutes did on that Kamala Harris interview, and it's absolutely obvious that they're engaging in propaganda. And then Scott Pelley, who is from 60 Minutes, went out and did that commencement speech at a college over the weekend and clearly couldn't hide his bias. And so if they're trying to pretend like there's some kind of unbiased network or reporting, there are plenty of pieces of evidence against it. And the American people have recognized that. They're not stupid. And that is why they are flocking to places like Real America's Voice instead of these biased networks.
Oh, well said. Ike Wingate, thank you so much for joining the show.
Great to be with you.
All right, coming up, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is calling on Republicans to question if President Trump is fit for office. But didn't her party cover up for Joe Biden's decline? We debate that next on American Sunrise. All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. Do you want to drink cafe quality coffee at home without the price tag or the compromise? Well, 1775 Starter Kit is packed with value and built for people who care about what they support. You'll get 3 bags of coffee, 2 16-ounce of your choice, dark or medium roast, plus their longevity blend infused with anti-aging CAAKG, clinically shown to support healthy aging and reduce biological age. You cover 2 bags. $17.75 covers the rest. That's a full 16-ounce bag of coffee plus premium gear, a matte black tumbler, frother, gold scoop, or reusable K-cup filter. What more could you need? Whether you drink whole bean, grounds, or pods, it's your call. You build the bundle. The coffee is organic, single origin, high altitude, and small batch roasted. Smooth, clean, no jitters, no crash, no bitterness, just good coffee. All that for less than $1 a cup, made with integrity and delivered with purpose. So make sure you're heading to 1775coffee.com/Rav and grab your starter kit while it's still available. Now that we are caffeinated, it is time to stay awake, not woke. And who is woke today? Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Crockett is calling on Republicans to question President Trump and his mental acuity when her party tried to hide Joe Biden's decline. Take a listen to this.
Seen as the world leaders that we historically have been, the world deserves better. It is time for Republicans to start calling him out and start questioning his mental acuity and whether or not he is equipped to serve mentally. We know when it comes down to his criminality, he is not qualified to serve, but this is just absolutely deplorable.
All right, let's now bring in Terrance and Bo for more. I mean, Jasmine Crockett is pretty much known for saying crazy things at this point, but I mean, the hypocrisy here, Bo, is just so blatant.
It is. We talked about it yesterday. You know, they had the opportunity to invoke the 25th Amendment at the time with Joe Biden. They didn't do it. They were dishonest with the American people. And I think for her to get up there and say, oh, we need to question President Trump's mental acuity is not just hypocritical, it's absurd, because they did have the opportunity to invoke the 25th Amendment when Joe Biden was clearly slipping. And Terrance, you know, the way I see it is President Trump said he would agree to a mental competency test. He said, I'll do it, but you got to do it too. He would do it right now, I believe, if they questioned him. So if the proof is in the pudding, as they say, he'll do it. Joe Biden couldn't have done it, probably couldn't have done it 4 years ago.
You know, calls to test President Trump's mental acuity at this point are just white noise. It's just extraneous noise out there. I don't think the American people care. And it definitely, coming from the left, is not, it falls on deaf ears, particularly coming out of Joe Biden. The comparison is stark. It's literally a polar opposite comparison in terms of obvious mental acuity. We know that Joe Biden was not fit, that he had mental challenges, and that age truly showed its face, not only physically on him, but also in terms of his mental acuity, mental ability. That doesn't seem to be the case with President Trump. And so when you bring up these sorts of issues, it's really white noise. If you want to question or take issue with policies, then do that. But don't bring up mental acuity and you know, fitness to serve, particularly when you've got one president now who seems very fit and absolutely seems like he knows what's going on, and he's following up a president who we know could barely walk upstairs and probably, and again, we also know this, could barely make a coherent thought. So the differences are just stark, and bringing up these sorts of things, I think, are just white noise.
Yeah, absolutely. A contrast. President Trump is doing so much every day. It's almost hard to keep up with. It's, you know, like you said, it's just totally different than what we saw during President Biden's administration. But I'm going to take that a step further, Terrance. I think it's white noise to continue just talking about how, yes, Biden had mental decline. Yes, there was a cover up. OK, Jake Tapper is on his book tour. He's going to keep repeating this over and over and over again to sell books. But what are we doing about it? Where is the accountability? Where is anybody that is being held accountable for this cover up? I think that's what we need to be talking about more, or else it's just, like you said, Terrance, white noise.
I think you make a fair point, Emily. At some point in time, talk needs to stop, and there needs to be some action. And it's something I think many on the right in particular have called for, is that there needs to be accountability. But who's going to do that? Is Congress going to hold someone accountable? There's been a lot of talk about that, but it doesn't seem that there's been a whole lot of action. We've also heard from the White House that there might be investigations, but similar to what we've been talking about, investigations are just a whole lot of talk. Something's got to come out of those investigations, and someone's got to be held accountable.
Yeah, and Terrance, to your point, you know, I mean, it's like you said with James Comer. I mean, you know, are we going to get to the bottom of the Biden family? I don't know. This idea of accountability, it's a great idea to talk about for us on television, but is it actually going to happen? And when I think of Jasmine Crockett, I don't know if you guys saw this article or not, but Politico has floated this idea of a shadow government, a shadow cabinet, to balance what President Trump is doing. Let me tell you some of the names they got put up here. Bill Nye, Jon Stewart, Nikki Glaser, John Fetterman's wife. This is absurd. And you know what I say? If that's their idea, if that's who they really want to put up there as a shadow government, have at it. Let Jasmine Crockett be your shadow press secretary, because every time she speaks, she puts her foot in her mouth. So, you know, the Democrats, they just don't have a plan. We can try to hold them accountable, but what I say is kind of like what was said before. It's Operation Let Them Talk. Because as soon as you hear them speak, you know exactly what's coming out of their mouth, and I would call that bull caca.
Isn't the point of a shadow government that they're in the shadows too? Like, if we know all the names, that doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, they just...
By the way, bull caca.
Bull caca.
Go ahead.
No, bull caca.
Bull caca, that's a great political term right there. I think I learned that in Civics 101. Bull caca, it's a good political term.
Yeah, it's family show. We can't say too much more there.
I'm going to have to save that vocabulary just in case. All right. Great discussion, you guys. Loved it. All right. Coming up, country music power couple Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are leaning into their faith. Why McGraw credits his wife with saving his life. After the break.
God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. It is time now for our moment of faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. And in focus today, country music superstar Tim McGraw is giving credit to his wife Faith Hill for saving his life and transforming his wild ways. During an appearance on the Tracy Lawrence Roadhouse podcast, McGraw says his wife turned his life around. And after the births of his 3 daughters, he says the women in his life, quote, calm the demons. Let's take a look.
Meeting my wife saved my life. I mean, I was a wild man. No, you know that. No. I mean, I was a wild man. I was having fun. She turned my life around, and I couldn't have found a better woman. And not only beautiful and talented, but just a good person. Yeah. And then having our daughters. I mean, you have girls.
Oh yeah, it's life changing.
It's life changing, and they make you a better person, and they certainly calm the demons.
Let's welcome in CBN digital host and journalist Billy Hallowell for discussion. Billy, it's great to have you with me this morning. You know, many men attribute their salvation, and I mean that literally, sometimes saving their lives, and spiritually to the women in their lives. And I think this is why marriage is the anchor of our society and how God intended it, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, marriage and fatherhood. He said a number of other things there, too. You know, fatherhood changed his perspective. It changed the way he thought about how his future would be. And I think this line is key, and especially in light of what you just said. He said, it certainly took me out of myself. And in a culture where we're so dominated by the self, absolutely, marriage and fatherhood teaches us a lot of lessons and really equips us to deal with the day-to-day in life.
And speaking of self, on that topic, Billy, Tim said as I was listening to it that there has to be a bit of narcissism in this industry, and you have to fight it. And I've been in this music industry for a while, and I understand it. He says Faith Hill, his wife, humbled him. I think of Tim's great song, Humble and Kind. I know our viewers will know that song. The balance of ego and humility is tough, but Faith did that for Tim. And I feel like our soulmates should do that. I know that my fiance does.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? When it comes to faith, you have to die to yourself, right? That is what you're called to do and to live for God. When it comes to marriage, and marriage is really a reflection in so many ways of God's relationship with human beings, you have to die to yourself. If you want to have a successful marriage or relationship, you have to say, I'm going to put this other person first. And that is really contrary to human nature and how we want to live. And it's such an amazing exercise. And it points back to our faith. God sent his son to die for us, right? We need to live for others, put them before ourselves. And so I learned that the hard way every day in my own life, in my own marriage. And it's amazing, though, when you do that, what actually comes and happens as a result of that.
Yeah, and I remember watching them on tour. They took their tour buses out together. They brought their 3 daughters with them. That's hard to do in this industry. But you know what? Credit to them for being a family unit, teaching their kids how they wanted them to be taught, because in this entertainment industry, that's a rarity. So I give them a lot of credit for that. Yeah. So, Billy, thank you so much for being with me this morning. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
God bless you. And we will be back with the second hour of American Sunrise in just 2 short minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Coming up on this second hour of American Sunrise, the Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court for help fast-tracking deportations. We'll be picking Christina Bob's legal mind about how successful the move may be. Plus, we're going to be talking about her new book. President Trump's legal team is threatening CBS News with more defamation claims amidst settlement talks with 60 Minutes. We'll be talking about that. And Vice President J.D. Vance is going to be in Las Vegas today speaking at the Bitcoin conference there. So does the engagement reflect the administration's openness to dealing with crypto? Those stories and so much more on this second hour of American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back to this second hour of American Sunrise. I'm Terrance Bates in our Denver newsroom. Let's bring in Bo Davidson. He's in our West Palm Beach newsroom, filling in for Dr. Gina. Emily Finn, also in the Palm Beaches this morning. I feel left out. You guys are in nice, warm weather. Even I heard that maybe it was raining a little bit, but it's chilly here compared to where you guys are. So I'm a little jealous. Good morning, you two.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Terrance. I was getting a little scared. We heard some thunder down here in West Palm.
And Terrance, but I do understand that the past weekend, I think I heard you say you went to Estes Park, which when I used to live in Denver was a lovely area. Did you have a good time?
I did not go. We were talking about The Shining, and there's a hotel in Estes Park. Yeah. I can't even think of what it's called, but The Shining, that movie with Jack Nicholson, it was set at the Stanley Hotel. That's what it's called.
Stanley.
It was set in Estes Park, and so the family and I have been up there a couple of times to visit that hotel, and I'll have to tell you guys the story of the one experience there. There was a kid in his underwear on the balcony threatening to jump when we were there.
Oh, no.
And it was really, he did not jump. He's fine.
Thank God.
But it was pretty bizarre. It was pretty bizarre.
Something you don't forget,
anyway,
for sure.
Yeah, oh, absolutely not. Like, that's still a joke. Like, my girls were like, do you remember? And they were, maybe 8 or 9. They were like, do you remember when we went? And I was like, yeah, Daddy remembers. Anyway, let's talk about some of the big news stories of the day. President Trump and Vladimir Putin. President Trump saying that Putin is actually playing with fire when it comes to the situation with Ukraine. Here's a Truth Social post on Putin. He says, what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad. He is playing with fire. That's the actual post on Truth Social. Guys, it seems like this whole issue with Vladimir Putin is just getting out of hand, and President Trump is going to have to rein him in really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate President Trump being so transparent. I mean, we know exactly what he's thinking on his Truth Social constantly. Look at this this post on our screen here. But sometimes these conversations, I feel like, need to be behind closed doors. It seems like things are escalating a bit, and I hope that the tensions really calm down a bit, Bo.
Yeah, and I just think about what President Trump said about these two countries' presidents. They've got to want peace. If you're going to come to any sort of solution, they have to want peace. Otherwise, it's a no-go. So for those who say that Trump cozies up to Putin, I think this is pretty prima facie evidence that he's not. He's talking tough with them because this is what's got to happen. But the two leaders have to desire peace, true peace, to make this work. And God help us, I hope they find it.
Absolutely. And guys, in other headlines this morning, 14 state attorneys general have the green light to move forward with a lawsuit against Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency. They're actually specifically challenging DOJ's efforts to cut federal spending, saying that there's no law authorizing Musk to slash budgets. They also are trying to stop DOJ from closing federal agencies. The top law enforcement officials from New Mexico, Oregon, and 12 other states filed suit alleging that President Trump has given Musk, quote, unchecked legal authority without authorization from Congress. While D.C. federal court judge Tanya Chutkan upheld the case against Musk, she dismissed claims against President Trump, saying that her court couldn't interfere with the performance of his official duties as president. This latest lawsuit is among about 20 that have been filed in various federal courts pushing back against Elon Musk's authority as the head of DOJ. Well, Doge isn't the only challenge Elon Musk is facing these days. He's also dealing with another failed launch of his SpaceX mega rocket Starship. The 403-foot rocket blasted off for its 9th demo Tuesday evening. It nearly made it to space, but then spiraled back to Earth and crashed into the Indian Ocean. SpaceX is calling it a, quote, rapid unscheduled disassembly. Tuesday's launch came after back-to-back explosions during previous launch attempts. SpaceX was hoping to release a series of mock satellites following liftoff, but that part of the mission failed as well because the door wouldn't open all the way. Musk is now promising to launch a Starship every 3 to 4 weeks for the next 3 flights. The ships are ultimately intended for travel to Moon and to Mars. Well, from senator to governor, that is former college football coach and now Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville's plan. He's looking to ride the Auburn War Eagle all the way to the governor's mansion.
But I'm doing this to help this country and the great state of Alabama. I'm a football coach. I'm a leader. I'm a builder. I'm a recruiter. And we're going to grow Alabama. We're going to bring manufacturing to the state. We're going to stop this illegal immigration. We're going to make education better again. And we're going to do everything possible to make sure our kids, when they've graduated in this great state, the Yellowhammer State, that they stay in this state and work. We're going to have workforce development. So, Will, we got a lot of work to do nationally. I'm looking forward to that with President Trump. He's got us on the right track.
Tuberville is going to be running for governor in his home state next year. If Tuberville does win and leaves his Senate seat, he'll likely be replaced by another Republican, as his district is pretty solid Republican. All right, now we want to shift gears to deportations. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to make it easier to authorize rapid deportations. Officials say that we are facing a crisis of illegal immigration, and they're adding the most deserving illegal aliens for removal are often the hardest to deport. All of this comes after a judge blocked the Trump administration from deporting illegal aliens to countries that they aren't from. So let's talk about this more with attorney for Judicial Watch and former Trump attorney Christina Bobb. Christina, by the way, also has a new book out called Defiant: Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. Christina, great looking book there. I want to talk about that momentarily, but first, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Terrance. Thanks for having me.
All right, so put into perspective the legal challenges that President Trump is facing right now when it comes to deporting some of the worst of the worst. It seems like at every turn he's having to be in court, or the Justice Department is having to be in court to justify these sorts of moves.
Yeah, this is, I've got to say, it's a little bit unusual because for years, for decades, we've had processes of expedited removal. Under President Trump's first term, they had the Remain in Mexico program in place. We have had historically the ability for the president to remove groups of people faster than other groups of people, of course, all, afforded due process. And the judges now seem to be changing the script in Trump 2.0. And quite honestly, I put the blame directly on the shoulders of the Supreme Court, because they have the ability to shut this down, to issue one ruling that complies with historic precedent, with the way that we've done things in the past. And yet, is that a bit of a head-scratching moment, because you see the President of the United States basically asking the Supreme Court if he's allowed to do his job. So, I don't know what's going to happen in this. I hope they allow the president to do his job. That's what they should do. But I have to say, I think it's very unusual, because historically, the president has the ability to remove people in an expedited manner. And we saw that not that long ago in his first term.
Absolutely. Christina, Bo Davidson here. I want to get your thought on another legal challenge. NPR is suing the Trump administration after President Trump signed an executive order cutting some funding. The CEO for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting said this executive order violates the First Amendment and it needs to be challenged for constitutionality. What do you make of this? Does NPR have any leg to stand on legally?
No, I love this argument because it's so absurd and ridiculous. I don't think they have anything to stand on. It doesn't mean the judges aren't going to go their way, because they do whatever they want these days. But no, the First Amendment protects your right to free speech. It does not protect your pseudo right for the government to fund your free speech. So if NPR wants to continue to operate, they can. They just aren't going to get paid by the government to do it. So it's not an infringement on freedom of speech. And they may be making the argument that Americans have the right to receive information. That's also part of the rights that are protected by the First Amendment. But again, that's not what is at issue here. The issue is the government required to fund their speech? And the answer is clearly no.
Yeah, this is a pretty cut and dry, simple case there, Christina. We also want to get your take on this. President Trump's legal team is threatening CBS News with additional defamation claims. The Washington Free Beacon reports that there was a segment on May 4th on 60 Minutes that linked Trump to a mob boss. This comes as Trump and Paramount were already in settlement talks on another matter. I mean, this is some serious turmoil at CBS. Every week there's a new headline about a new scandal going on at their network. I mean, how did they survive, Christina?
Well, they survived because no one has held them accountable before, but they've been doing this for a long time. So thank God we finally have a president in office who's going to say, nope, you can't do that. You have to comply with the law just like everybody else. And CBS is a huge outlet. I mean, they reach everybody, probably everybody in the country and, a lot of people worldwide. Know CBS News or hear their reports. So the fact that they're calling him a mob boss, they're defaming him, and they're using derogatory information for which they have no support, that's defamation. And so I think it's great that President Trump is doing this because maybe CBS will finally stop and they might actually just report the news.
As we're talking about all of these legal challenges that President Trump is facing, the word unprecedented comes to my mind. And I hate to use that word because I think it's trite. I think people overuse it. But in this particular case, I do think it's appropriate. I can't remember a presidential administration having to deal with so many legal challenges on so many different levels than this. Yeah. Can you think of anything like this?
No, I've actually looked into it, and I have a small section about that in my book, actually, and it's absurd. It's really unbelievable the number of cases that have been brought against this president and against this entire administration in such a short amount of time. And the reason they're doing it is because the courts are the only weapon that they have left. And I will also blame Republicans for this. Republicans have the House, the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court, the majority of governors, a majority of AGs, a majority of state legislatures, and yet we sit and whine and say this is a Democrat problem. It's not a Democrat problem. It's a Republican problem, and Republicans need to step up and fix it.
Christina, before I let you go, I do want to talk a bit about the book. What motivated it? I've got an idea based on the title, but I'll let you flesh it out for us.
Yeah, well, I wanted people to know the truth. This is the true story of what actually happened. Spoiler alert, the stories that the media told you aren't true. So I was so grateful that President Trump was willing to do the foreword for the book. It's basically what actually happened. And it's pretty shocking when you see the difference between what actually happened. I have text messages and emails in there to show you exact timeline of who knew what and when they knew it. And it's not the story that you see on TV. And it also, I also highlight a few cases to let the American people know, myself included. I'm currently under 9 felony indictments in the state of Arizona. This is not a Donald Trump problem. They have not weaponized the Justice Department against Donald Trump. Yes, that did happen, but they've weaponized it against the American people. And Americans need to understand how close it is to your doorstep, because they're really taking scary steps, not just to sue people and that type of lawfare that we've seen for a while. They are now using the criminal justice system to silence people that oppose them.
Christina, Bob, we appreciate your time. The new book called Defiant: Inside the Mar-a-Lago Raid and the Left's Ongoing Lawfare. Always good to talk to you, Christina. We appreciate you being here with us.
You as well. Thanks, Terrance.
All right. Well, coming up, add Harvard Law Professor Emeritus to the growing list of people suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. Ahead, why the legal professor believes the president hates intellect. Find out who specifically I'm talking about coming up. Plus, how much more waste does Doge find in the D.C. swamp? Here's a hint. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. We'll discuss. That's later in the show. Stick around. More American Sunrise coming your way right after this break.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise contributor Emily Finn. It's great to have you with us this morning. Time now to drain the swamp, and this morning we're fleshing out Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe for saying President Trump is, quote, obviously unhinged and hates intellect. Tribe making those bizarre remarks on MSNBC's The Last Word. This comes as the Trump administration plans to eliminate all federal funding for the woke Ivy League university, with plans to cancel around $100 million in remaining government contracts. Take a listen to how Tribe describes the Trump administration's efforts.
He's obviously unhinged. He has no idea what he's talking about. He just thinks that slinging around, frankly, BS about the people at Harvard and other institutions will somehow substitute for taking the law into account. But obviously, this is a president who hates intellect, who despises the symbol of excellence in the world of higher education around the world.
All right, let's bring in Terrance and Bo for more. I mean, it kind of reminds me about what Christina Bobb, and David is back as well. Great. It reminds me of what Christina Bobb was saying during our last segment that, with NPR, that it's not that they can't continue to operate. It's not that Harvard can't continue to operate as a university. They just aren't going to get the federal funding anymore, Bo.
I agree. And I don't think personally, Emily, that President Trump hates intellect. I think what he hates is CCP infiltration in our education system. I think he hates intellectual property theft. I think he hates students that come here that are biased and designed to hate our country and may do terroristic acts and who are tied perhaps to terrorist groups. And at the end of the day, David and Terrance, I also think Harvard is an international business. About 25% or so of their student body comes from international students. So the way I see it is they're seeing a significant source of funding being cut off. They can say free speech all they want, but I think at the end of the day, they're still international business.
Yeah, let's just be honest here. Harvard is a rich school. Its endowment alone can continue business as usual. I'm old school. I come from a family where if I give you money, then I have a say in what you do with that money and how you proceed. And so I see that in government as well. If the government gives you money, the government has a say in how you operate. And if you don't want the government to have a say in how you operate, don't take the money. And so I think, David, that's largely what we're seeing. Again, it's very old school, it's very basic, but to me, that's really ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, and here's another thing that's pretty basic. What he's saying is that Trump is stupid. The voters that voted for Trump are stupid. And Hillary would call them, let's all say it together, deplorables. This is the same playbook that the Democrats have used for a long time, definitely since Trump has been on the scene. And what has it gotten them? It's gotten them 2 terms of Donald Trump's presidency because they cannot relate to someone out there that actually thinks for themselves, is a free thinker, and doesn't go by the company line. It is elitism run amok. And I think that is the real issue and the disconnect as to why Democrats, they can message all they want, but until they actually connect with people on their level, in their communities, it's not going to happen for Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely. This Harvard professor seems to think that Trump hates intellect, but I think he is trying to say that he just hates his own thoughts being challenged by Trump, who, like you said, David, is just inspiring free thinking. Well, great conversation, you guys. We want to know what you think. Let us know on Rumble or Getter. Hop on and let your voice be heard. Coming up on American Sunrise, Rav brings you live to Las Vegas as we're previewing Vice President J.D. Vance's keynote speech at this year's Bitcoin conference. Stay tuned for that report. Also, the saga between President Trump and Harvard University takes a new turn. What Trump just directed federal agencies to do could have a major impact on the Ivy League university. We have all the details. Stay with us.
back, everyone. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Good morning to you. Our director, Colin, and I were just remembering our times at the RNC there in Milwaukee last summer. I guess it was probably September, maybe? Last summer. Anyway, we were walking across that bridge you see there in the distance, and even at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning was already about 80 degrees, and it was humid and just wasn't fun. It was nice to get inside the air conditioning. Anyway, we're getting you ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. That's going to ring here in about 6 minutes. I can tell you pre-market trading all in the green right now. Pretty much everything's in the green, but just barely. We'll continue to keep an eye on it for you, though, and keep you updated. And again, we'll take you to the opening bell here in just a little bit. But first, let's get you over to David Brody. David, good morning.
Good morning, T. Bates. All right, from money to Bitcoin, maybe one and the same. Vice President J.D. Vance set to be the keynote speaker at this year's Bitcoin conference in Vegas later today. The event is hailed as, quote, the world's largest and most influential gathering of Bitcoin professionals, investors, and thought leaders. Well, joining us now from the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas at a very early morning out there is the co-founder of Wave Digital Assets. That'd be Les Borsay. Les, great to have you here, and thanks for getting up super early with us here from Vegas. So tell us, how's the buffet? No, the question is, tell us more about the Bitcoin situation out there. What's going to happen, and what do you expect to hear from the Vice President this morning?
You know, I'm looking forward to hearing the Vice President. I got to tell you, I've been coming to these events for a long time, and there's something really special about getting off the plane and seeing Air Force Two sitting there. It really does signify an administration that has really embraced Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and you know, the energy is palpable here. I've been coming to these events for a long time, and this is a very different feeling. And you have anyone that matters in the space attending this event.
What do people need to know about Bitcoin, where it's at now in terms of what Trump and J.D. Vance and this administration is trying to do, and where this is going exactly? Like, kind of get out your Bitcoin crystal ball, if you will. What's the future here? Where is this all going?
Well, I think it's easy to have a crystal ball if people understand the asset class. This is an asset that is recognized as digital gold. This is an asset that has an amount of scarcity connected to it. You know, 2040, we'll see 21 million of these Bitcoins, and that'll be it for the mining. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. The administration supporting initiatives like a digital reserve and really understanding what this asset class is. And if you know, the stable coin bill that just passed, the Senate, the Genius Act, everything that this administration is doing is driving to the enthusiasm of the asset class.
All right, well, humor me for a moment and dumb it down for me and maybe some in our audience who want to know more about the 101s of Bitcoin and try to understand what the market is like, what it means, because you talked about mining. I mean, I know the term and I kind of understand it, but like, what do people need to understand about Bitcoin and why it could be a very wise investment, or some of the pitfalls involved in it as well?
Well, I think there's pitfalls in any investment. And I think, you know, what we've seen in the past with the other parties specifically is not having a really deep knowledge of what this asset class is. So they tend to attack it. I think one of the things that the Republicans have done appropriately is taken the time to educate themselves on what the asset class is. Now, in terms of things like mining, you know, don't let those words fool you. It's just a mechanism that was the origination of how to get Bitcoin through a reward system. And we won't get into that. Let's think about currency today. You know, we don't take a truck and pass dollars around in the middle of the night to pay our bills. You know, money has been being transferred electronically for a long time. So think of this as just electronic money, but there's a finite amount of it. And if you hold on to that piece, which is divisible, you know, into kind of any amount, you know, that piece will gain value, especially as traditional finance starts to embrace it as an investment class. You know, we've seen BlackRock and the ETFs, and people understand what that means. It's digital currency that's traded peer to peer that has a whole bunch of uses connected to it.
We got about a minute left, but not to get in the weeds here, but how liquid is all this digital currency? I mean, what you need to get, you have to have a wallet, and then a crypto wallet, and then you have to do this, and you got to hit a few buttons. Like people are still old school, obviously, in terms of, hey, where is it in my bank account type thing.
Well, I mean, when people keep money at home, that's not necessarily their bank account. It's very liquid. These assets today are incredibly liquid. If we look at some of the biggest stable coins, the market cap on Tether is 158 billion. It trades, somewhere in the neighborhood of 67 billion a day. So these assets are becoming incredibly liquid today,
Yeah, Les Borsay, really appreciate your expertise and time. Thanks for getting up early, and enjoy the buffet. Please have a buffet. I hear the MGM Grand is to die for, as they say.
My pleasure. I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. We'll have you back on after you try the buffet. No, we'll have you back on for your analysis. Thank you. All right, time for T. Bates in Denver for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
We're less than a minute from the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. We're going to take you there here momentarily. The applause will get underway, and then we'll get an idea of how the markets are looking. I can tell you pre-market trading has been pretty up and down on the Dow. It's been in the green, it's been in the red, then back in the green, so we'll see if that continues. So the applause is underway, which means that we're going to hear the opening bell here momentarily, and then we really will get a full idea of how this day of trading is going to ultimately turn out. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the opening bell ringing there at the New York Stock Exchange, and the markets are now officially open. And look, we're starting off all in the green. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ are all up right now, as are the other precious metals and things there on the market. So hopefully it stays like this, and if you're an investor, you'll have a very good day. It'll be a beneficial day for you. Well, this July, there is a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc of emerging superpowers includes China, Russia, India, and Iran. They're meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling it the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of the dollars in your savings. While this transition won't happen overnight, the Rio Reset in July does mark a pivotal moment, when BRICS objectives move decisively from theoretical possibility towards inevitable reality. Learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. The Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free information kit on gold simply by texting the word America to the number 989898. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of satisfied customers, allow the Birch Gold Group to arm you with a free, no-obligation information kit on owning gold before July and before the Rio Reset. Again, text the word America to the number 989898 today. Still to come here on American Sunrise, the Trump administration wants to root out woke policies in the military. So could this new powerful and promoting peace through strength be the new direction and attitude of the Pentagon and the country? We'll discuss. Also, Republicans have excelled at using buzzwords to depict Democrats as out of touch, but can the Democrats find their voice amid the party's problems? We'll talk about it. All of that and so much more ahead on American Sunrise.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. Good morning. I'm Bo Davidson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We invite you to join the conversation on Getter and Rumble. Well, it's time now to take the political pulse of America and the beat today. Embattled Harvard University may lose lots of its Kennedy School of Government students if the Trump administration's possible ban on international enrollment happens. Breitbart reports nearly 60% of that specific school student body could be wiped out. Life at the Kennedy School has been riddled with anti-Israel activists since Hamas's deadly attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023. A federal judge recently blocked the president's plans to deny Harvard from enrolling students on foreign visas, and Trump wants Harvard to fight anti-Semitism on campus. We'll have much more on the Trump administration versus Harvard in just minutes. Meanwhile, the Trump administration wants to promote peace through strength. In this new ad narrated by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump, it highlights America's new attitude for the Pentagon and the country in terms of military. Watch this.
No more climate change worship. Through our power and might, we will lead the world to peace. Our friends will respect us, our enemies will fear us, and the whole world will admire the unrivaled greatness of the United States military.
Joining us now with his take, a man never shy to share his opinion, the host of America's Voice Live, Steve Gruber. Steve, when I watched this ad, I thought it could have been directed by Jerry Bruckheimer or Michael Bay, and the attitude I got from it was, we're not looking for a fight, but don't tempt us with a good time.
You know, that's the same message I got when I was at the West Point graduation on Saturday and with the president at Arlington on Monday. Look, we're going to have the strongest military in the world. We're going to lead with strength. We're not going to flinch, and we're not going to cower, but we're also going to look for peace. I mean, he's trying to find peace the way he's, wagging his finger, if you will. The president is at Vladimir Putin, as he should, saying, what are you doing? Same thing to Zelensky. What are you doing? Do you guys want the war to end? You just want it to go on forever. It seems they want it to go on forever. And so this is a president that's leading through strength. And look, you've got your volunteering numbers are better than they've been in years. The 1,002 cadets that graduated over the weekend at West Point, those people love their president. They do. They love their president, and it shows. And so there's a real embrace when you see videos like that of the new direction of this country. It's a patriotic step forward. We've got great adversaries in China and Russia and others, but if we are the biggest stick on the block, then maybe they don't mess around and we don't have to open up additional parts of Arlington. That was the point. The last part opened up in Arlington, Section 60. We don't need a Section 61 and 62. Let's speak softly and carry a big stick, or in this case, speak loudly and carry a big stick. Doesn't matter. Just be the strongest nation on earth. And I think that's the goal of this administration, quite clearly.
Absolutely. Steve, I do want to move to the other big story of the day. It has to do with the Trump administration continuing to push back against what's happening at Harvard University. Check out this headline. It says Trump administration moves to cut all remaining federal contracts with Harvard. This move would ultimately terminate about $100 million in contracts that Harvard could potentially get from the government. There's a hearing set for tomorrow on this issue. And this is really President Trump. You talked about carrying a big stick and now also really making some changes. This is President Trump doing just that. Can you hear me, Steve?
Oh, I thought you were going to a soundbite. I was mistaken. My mistake. I thought you were talking to some.
I'm sorry. So that was a question for you. It was a statement in the form of a question. Go ahead.
Right. Well, let me say this. Look, Harvard is just one example. The problem with infiltration, whether it's anti-Semitism or members of the CCP, it goes on all over this country. It goes on. I saw it in my own home state of Michigan, where they had 5 Chinese students up at Camp Grayling, right, taking pictures unauthorized. My bigger concern, the anti-Semitism is a big concern, no question. Harvard is being held to account for that. And so I look at that and I say, yes, that's important. But I believe that the bigger problem right now facing universities in this country are all the foreign students that come from places like China. Look, China foots the bill for a lot of these places. When I did my college tour with one of my children here a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I guess, they weren't selling me an education. They were selling me a meal plan and an entertainment package. And they can do that because they've got all this money coming in. China put so much money into these universities. Look, these Confucius Institutes, these are big fundraising operations. And it's also a way to infiltrate America's higher learning institutions. It's a problem. Anti-Semitism is a problem at Harvard. They should be held to account. But to me, the bigger problem is this infiltration of people here that don't like this country, that don't believe in this country. And so when I hear Marco Rubio and others say, if you come here as a student, and you trash talk America, or you take and try to hold up on a library or take over buildings or do damage and you get thrown out, well, good. It's a privilege, not a right. You come here from a foreign country, treat the place with respect, not as a doormat. And I agree with everything they're doing there.
Yeah, speaking of people that don't like our country, let's talk about the far left in America. Here's a headline for you from the Washington Post. Steve, Democratic troubles revive debate over left-wing buzzwords. You know, it's oligarchs instead of rich people. And you've got Senator Ruben Gallego, a Democrat of Arizona, saying some words are just too Ivy League tested terms. And so Democrats are starting to understand that, you know, maybe we shouldn't call folks that are of Hispanic origin Latinx because they don't even use the term. I mean, well, talk about being out of touch, Steve.
Yeah, what does that even mean? What does Latinx
I don't know.
mean?
I mean, it means if you're Latin and you're on X, you're Latinx, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
I've never understood that term. You know, the buzzwords from the left and the things that they say, the narrative from the left, being amplified. One of the things, I'm sure you guys have seen this, because I find it absolutely galling, this speech given by Scott Pelley over at Wake Forest.
Yeah,
freedom of speech is under attack. Really, Scott? Aren't you sitting there right now giving free speech and declaring to the world how horrible things are? I mean, he has free speech to sit there and trash talk everybody and play the victim. But it's the media in the corporate world that amplifies a lot of these buzzwords, as you put it. Democrats need a philosophy. They need to stand for something. The only thing they stand for is orange man bad. We hate Donald Trump. We're not going to support anything Donald Trump does. It wouldn't matter what he did. He could cure cancer today, and they say, look at all the oncologists that he's put out of business. That's what they would do, because that's how they operate. Anything that he does is wrong. They must denigrate, attack, diminish, undermine, and not only with Donald Trump, they do it with our country. They do it with all of us. I mean, they denigrate people that supported Donald Trump, people that don't support the Democrats, people that don't support their social programs, people that don't support open borders, people that don't support free stuff for everybody all the time that aren't even citizens. They make those people out to be the problem. The Democrat Party has a real problem in that they don't stand for anything that I'm aware of.
Steve.
And if I'm missing something, tell me.
Well, on that note about the Democratic Party, I want to get your thoughts on this story about Gavin Newsom. You know, he told Charlie Kirk that he believed that transgender athletes competing in women's sports was unfair. And we've got a 16-year-old high jumper and long jumper, track and field athlete out in California who's winning big time, advancing to the finals.
Yeah.
Now, he's talked the talk. Is Gavin Newsom going to actually walk the walk on this? Because President Trump has inserted himself in this debate. He said, you're not complying with this. And what does that say for Gavin Newsom's presidential aspirations if he doesn't walk the walk? Is he going to be the leader in 2028?
Gavin Newsom's a fraud. Let's start with that. He's a fraud.
Yeah.
He doesn't stand for anything. He also is a guy who will say anything and do anything for a few votes. He has no chance. But look at what Donald Trump's doing here. He's bookending this conversation. Maine on one side of the country and California on the other. The fact is, guys, you can't have guys in women's sports. You can't have guys in women's locker rooms. Look, I have a couple of daughters. Putting men or males in the locker rooms when they're 12, 13, 14 years old, that's insanity. These people are, they're already awkward. Teenage girls, anybody who's raised a daughter knows what I'm talking about. You don't do that to them. It's horrible. It's inexcusable. There's no defense of any of it. And then to have these people, and the person that I feel the worst for, it's not the girl that finishes second who ends up in the podium. It's the girl that would have been third or fourth or fifth and gets pushed off the podium altogether, that worked really hard just to make the podium. Didn't think she was going to make it to the top of that podium, but made it to the podium for a medal in track and field or in swimming or in diving, and gets pushed off the podium altogether and leaves empty-handed. That's the person that really, I think, is hurt the most, because that ripples through their whole life. That kind of disappointment that kind of hard work not paying off, that ripples through somebody's life. And Gavin Newsom, he's a fraud. And I don't think he's going to be the leader of the party. I think if I was a betting man, I'm not, but if I were, I would put my money on Josh Shapiro at this point to be the guy who comes out mostly in the lead, which is one of the reasons I think that Donald Trump will be in Pennsylvania this Friday to talk about $14 billion in Nippon Steel and showing the people of Pennsylvania that voting for Donald Trump delivered tens of thousands of jobs and investment in the state of Pennsylvania, the #1 most critical swing state because of its size. And I think that puts Josh Shapiro at a bit of a disadvantage. Of course, we're 2.5 lifetimes from the midterms right now. We're a long way out in politics as far as that goes. But I don't think Gavin Newsom stands a chance at this point. Who wants to be California? Honestly, when it comes to politics.
No, absolutely. Good point. Hey, Steve, earlier you wanted to hear a soundbite, so I'm going to give you a soundbite now. This is HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy talking about changing the COVID vaccine recommendations. Here it is, and we'll talk on the other side.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS Secretary, and I'm here today with NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
We're now one step closer to realizing President Trump's promise to make America healthy again.
All right, Steve. So the words "about time" come to my mind, and then what's next is, and what else comes? Like, when else are you going to cut it for the rest of the people? But that's just my 2 cents. I'd love to hear your 4 cents. You're richer than I am.
My real quick response to this is I don't think anybody should take this. I think that the side effects warning on the package should say myocarditis for young men that could result in death. We should be specifically and clear about that. And we're not. I wouldn't recommend this. I don't know doctors who would recommend this at this point. So not just for kids and pregnant women, for anybody that I can think of.
I'm with you.
Well, Steve Gruber, thank you so much for joining us today. We've got, I guess, an extra 4 cents now, don't we, Terrance? Are we richer?
We do. Well, my 2 plus Steve's 4, that's 6.
That's 6.
I'm not great at math, but that's 6 cents. We're rich. We're going to Disneyland.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. If you're ready to ditch your morning coffee for something a little healthier, why not drink tea? Find out how Artillery Tea Company could become your new morning routine ahead. Plus, a man's 25-day voyage from Oregon to Hawaii is over. But it's not about the destination or journey that made Oliver Widger a viral sensation. It's his story of courage that is inspiring many across the world. The details ahead. We're back with more American Sunrise right after this, so don't go away.
Let's spill some tea.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Terrance Bates. We appreciate you being here with us for American Sunrise. Let's Spill Some Tea is sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is the website. Use the promo code MEMORIAL for 15% off. That's only for orders today, though. Artillery tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each can be used not just once, but twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTCO.com. That's the website. Use the promo code MEMORIAL for 15% off an order for today only. All right, let's get right into what's in the cup today, and that would be specifically what makes artillery tea as good as it is. To answer that question, let's bring in the co-founder of Artillery Tea Company, Mike Britton. Mike, always good to see you. I want to start things off with your newest blend. The last time we talked, you announced it. It went live, and you were telling me that sales have been going very, very well.
Yeah, the reception of the new Battleship Blue blend has been great so far. We got our first wave of reviews in. They've been overwhelmingly positive, and I was telling you during the break that we need to restock here pretty soon because we're actually almost sold out of it already, which is kind of a first for us for launching a new blend to be out this quickly. And so I think it's one of our best blends so far. That's kind of been the feedback, is that, you know, this is the favorite of what we've offered so far. So if you haven't tried it yet, you know, please do that. Use that code MEMORIAL, because that's, again, for orders today only.
So what makes Battleship Blue so unique?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is the leaves themselves. They're from Nepal, and they're from a specific elevation in Nepal, and so the flavor profile that you get with these leaves is different than most of the black tea that you're going to taste out there, which is from India, Sri Lanka, China mostly. So it's kind of like smoother. It's a smoother flavor. It's all organic ingredients. We're really starting to do that more. We want to make America healthy again, and I think that starts with offering an organic product with no harmful pesticides, and also with our tea bags that are free from the typical bleach paper and glue and microplastics and all that sort of thing. So with us, you're getting a clean product for the Battleship Blue included. You're getting clean tea bags with clean, organic, whole leaf tea and all natural ingredients.
And this Battleship Blue is kind of a blueberry flavor tea, correct? It's got floral notes. Look at me sounding like I really know what's going on, but it's got these blueberry floral notes. Is that right? I almost feel weird even saying it. I'm like, dude, you're a Coke and beer drinker. Like, yes, these blueberry notes on the Battleship Blue. I feel so fancy.
Yeah, right. Well, it's more of a mixed berry, so we actually put elderberries in there too. So it's kind of like a blueberry elderberry mix. There is something called blue cornflower in there, but it actually doesn't add anything to the flavor. It's more for just aesthetics. And so the flavor is going to come from the dried elderberries, the Nepal black tea, and the blueberry.
Okay, elderberries. That's interesting. All right, so once again, give folks the code that they can use today only in order to get a bit of a hookup and maybe try that blueberry tea, or I'm sorry, the Battleship Blue tea. Because it's Battleship Blue, in my mind, it's going to be all blueberry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the code is MEMORIAL for 15% off of orders today. We always offer 15% off of subscription orders. You can set up automatic shipments every month or every 2 months or every 3 months, whatever fits your preferences. And so that's going on all the time. But for today only, for one-time purchases, we have that code MEMORIAL.
All right, Mike, always good to see you. Continued success, and I'm looking forward to tasting Battleship Blue. Mike Britton, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Still to come here on American Sunrise, the inspiring story of an Oregon man who quit his job, liquidated his retirement savings, and decided to break the mold. You definitely don't want to miss this man's epic adventure. That's next.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise contributor Emily Finn. Thank you so much for joining us today. Time now for the sunny side up, and in the pan today, an Oregon man quit his job, bought a boat, and set sail with his cat for a weeks-long adventure. You have to hear this. When Oliver Widger and his kitty Phoenix hit their goal of reaching Hawaii, fans of his journey that was well documented through his social media accounts greeted him with applause. How cool. Hawaii Democrat Governor Josh Green was even there for the triumphant moment. Widger says his diagnosis with a rare condition a few years ago was part of his inspiration for braving the sea. He has 2 or more neck bones that are fused together, and so he's at risk of paralysis. So after 11 years at his corporate job, Widger left everything behind, eating beans and rice for a year in order to save up for the experience of a lifetime. Watch this.
You can have a really good job and you're still kind of just getting by. Yeah. And everybody feels that. And I think, people see somebody that's like kind of broken out of it and they feel, it's possible, I guess. For sure. It is possible. It doesn't really matter how much money you make at this point. Everybody's just trying to do enough to get by. And you can only, that just wears you out. And it's just the world's in a weird place. And I think people have seen that it's possible to break out.
All right, it's a very cool moment, a really unique experience. It takes a lot of bravery to be able to kind of go against the grain like that. Awesome to see.
Very cool, very cool. Quit your job, I like that. Buy a boat, go do that boat thing. Get on a boat, that's a good deal. The cat, look, I don't know about that. Sorry. God bless the cats of America.